right, welcome to the Cape Charles Town Hall meeting. If we could have a roll call, please.
Buckholz present.
Holloway present.
Bennett present.
Buda present.
Grossman present.
Fulmer present.
Thank you so much. And if we could go to the written comments, please, to be read into the record.
Well,
Do I do
No.
the rules?
no,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
This says the remarks first, but we can go to the rules. All right, so anyway, so once we're done reading the letters, the speakers that do want to speak tonight, there is no sign up. So all you need to do is just let me know. I will recognize you. We'll get one of the portable microphones to you so that you can speak. Every speaker must have a standing in Cape Charles, whether it be residents, business, or officials associated with the town. Only one person can speak at a time, please. Speakers must wait to receive, oh, I already said that. Just a minute. Okay, so all speakers will address myself and council, no others in the building. There are no formal time limits on the speakers' remarks. However, out of respect for other speakers, comments should be as brief to the point as possible. If necessary, and if a lot of the same things are being brought up, I will put a limit on the time for speakers later on. Those who provided written comments that have been read into the record may speak in person as well, but they should not repeat the same subject that they had in the letter. All speakers should be provided an opportunity to speak before anyone who has already spoken is permitted to speak for a second time. There will be no applause, cheering, or jeering during the meeting. Those who violate this rule will be escorted from the building. Speakers will be respectful and refrain from abusive or offensive language. Entry, exit areas of the building must be kept clear at all times, which we've already closed it for the evening. We're at capacity. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask for a clarification?
Yes.
You had mentioned that we're going to go through written comments first as opposed to allowing speakers. Based on the magnitude of letters that we've gotten in, is it better than to have the speakers go first?
We can open that up for discussion. I was doing it as it always has been done in the past.
I think those folks are here in person, and we should hear from them first.
I agree.
Does this need to be?
no, it's informal, whatever
if all
you want to
agree?
do.
That's fine.
All right. Then we'll just switch this around and
Well,
let's, oh, go ahead.
so if that's the case, then let me start first.
Go right ahead.
Welcome, everybody. Wow, this is incredible. This is the most people I've ever seen in this room. So thank you for your time and interest, especially on such a beautiful day. I guess I wanted to just kind of start by bringing everybody up to speed with the process, where we are. So last summer, the town council gave me marching orders to start researching short-term rental regulations, because that's something that that came out as a high priority in the previous town survey.
There's like 40 people out there.
Yeah. Yeah, we're actually, if somebody wants to leave and to let somebody else in, that's certainly possible. But anyway, that's why we're streaming this on Facebook too, so that people can watch on Facebook if they can't get in, or if they can't make it at all, they can go back and look at it later and see what's happened. Anyway, so get back to the process. So based on community input, the council told me last year to start working on researching potential regulations for STRs. So to help me do that, I put together an ad hoc committee of just a working group of people to help bring different perspectives to the discussion. And with their help, we did some research on other places, and we put together some initial ideas to bring forward for people to start commenting on. I mean, you have to have a starting point, and so that's what we did first last summer and last fall. We brought those recommendations forward to a joint work session between the town council and the planning commission in early November last year. There was not a lot of consensus on some of the more controversial components of those recommendations. So we paused the work to do a couple of things. One, we wanted to get some more direct input from the community. So we wanted to put out in this year's survey a very poignant question about STRs to get direct input, what the community thought on the most controversial issue, which was whether we should limit STRs or not. We wanted to wait to use that information for when the council updated the strategic plan this year, again, because that's where I get my marching orders. And we wanted to wait and see what mischief the General Assembly might create in Richmond this year as it relates to STRs. So all of those things, so that's what happened most of the winter. So not a lot of work got done. We were waiting for those things to happen. As we were finishing up those things, one of the last things we were doing was approving the strategic plan. Now, the strategic plan doesn't have any specific STR regulations in it. It just makes STRs a priority or not. During that approval process, we saw quite a large input from the community. And there was clearly some confusion in the public regarding our process. We were misquoted in a prior meeting saying that we accused the public of being confused about the issue. I would never insult you like that. You know what your issues are, okay? But clearly there were issues with the process and where we were in the process. And so because of that, we suggested that we do this. We have this meeting. I mean, there's just been too much discussion going on, too many assumptions about where we are or how far we've gone. And before I continued the staff work to refine these ideas, Council wanted to hear from all of you. And so that's why we're here tonight, is for you to express your thoughts on the recommendations. The only thing we've published are those initial ideas. They've been on the website since November. We had copies in the back. We only had 100 copies, and there's more than 100 of you here. So please share if you didn't get one. But you've probably seen them before. Nothing's changed since November. It's not our expectation tonight that we are going to solve any problem. Okay, we're not solving any problem tonight. It's our goal to understand the problems better tonight, so that we can move forward. Okay, so we're not going to reach consensus. The council can't reach consensus. This is essentially a work session. A town hall meeting is a work session that allows the public to participate. Okay, you can't take any formal action in a work session. So that's why we're here tonight, mostly to listen and to answer your questions if we can, and then once we get input from you, I'll ask for a little more input from the council, and we'll keep on working. So with that, what I'd like to do is go back to the documents that have been provided. So last November, I provided kind of a cover memo introducing the process, right? It was that meeting in November was the first time the public or the council or the commission saw anything. So that was the very, very beginning of our process. I stated right up front in the first paragraph of that memo, that this committee that I put together has no formal authority, there's no decision-making authority. It was simply a working group to assist staff, me, so I could have varying perspectives, so I could bring something forward to the commission and to the council. It also says in the last paragraph of that memo, it is important to note that the presentation and the recommendations that are being offered does not represent the end of a process, but rather the beginning of one. It's just a starting point. So everything you see in here, okay, these were just initial thoughts. We need something to start throwing darts at, right? So what I'm just going to go very briefly through those recommendations to give you our understanding of the outcome of the work session in November. The first 4 recommendations, there's 13 recommendations here. The first 4 all had to do one way or another with the possibility of limiting the number of STRs. Okay, there was no consensus about that in the work session. Okay, the council, the commission, there was no consensus on that. So nothing's been done with it. Okay, that whole issue, anything regarding 1 through 4 has been tabled pending further research and further input. So, so that's something that the IMI committee will continue working on, is doing that research and taking into account what we hear here tonight. Number 5 was not too controversial. All it said was that we would start issuing permits. Right now, there are no STR permits. Everybody gets a business license. If you have a business, you get a business license. That's all we have. So we would just start issuing permits with the business license. That's what number 5 is. Not too controversial. Number 6 said that STR permits would transfer with the property. Now, if you were to implement caps, that's meaningful, and that was controversial, and there was no consensus on number 6, okay? No one's agreed to number 6. It was just an idea that we put out there that we'll need to deal with later if I get direction to do that. Okay, then number 7 through 11. These are all not too controversial either. So number 7 just says that we won't have a separate STR registry. We'll just track STRs through the business license database. It's just easier for us to do. 8 was about occupancy. Right now, the code official sets occupancy based on different rules depending on where we are. This would set occupancy based on the square footage of official bedrooms as it's currently defined in the zoning code. So that wasn't too controversial at the work session. The only thing that group suggested was that this recommendation suggested that children under 10 could be exempt. They lowered that age down to 2. But again, that was just an idea. Nothing's been approved. Number 9 had to deal with inspections. It just said that the town would do initial inspections, then there would be re-inspections every year. There would be potential self-certifications for a couple of years, and the town would go back and re-inspect. Again, not controversial. 10 was the one that tried to hold STRs more accountable. So there's a list of violations, and if they were to violate anything on this list, they could lose their permit for a year and not be able to operate. I mean, there's issues that we would have to work out as far as how we would enforce that, but the general concept, though, was, again, not controversial. And then 11 was just more of a mechanical thing for staff, that when violations do occur, they have to be determined by the staff person who has the authority to do so. That's just a state law thing. So those are concepts that we could continue to flesh out and work on and bring forward once we get back to work. 12 dealt with parking. This concept, no consensus on that one either, okay? So the parking idea in here did not gain traction. There's been no further work on it. So parking, like the STR limits, has been tabled for now. 13 was actually a list of 10 smaller things. And each of these 10 smaller things, again, were not very controversial, and all of these things we could continue to work on. So anyway, so as you're addressing any of these recommendations, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on where those recommendations are in the process. Okay. Other than that, I think that's all I wanted to cover, Mr. Mayor. You can turn it over.
Just real quickly, if I could ask everybody to please just check your phones, and if you could put them on silent before we get started, I'd appreciate it. All right. So, who would like to speak first?
Thank you for arranging this so that you can hear from us. I appreciate that. I'm Liz Pruitt. I'm a full-time voting resident of Cape Charles. I think the question of limiting short-term rentals could and should be asked another way. Do we want a year-round community here? And what does that community look like? What is your vision? It's a question that's being asked in towns all over the country and all over the world. A good place to start is what we agree on. This is a beautiful town, and that is owed in no small part to tourism. The marketing has been successful, and we all enjoy benefits from the vibrancy of this town. However, full-time residents, your constituents, also experience negative effects from tourism and the town's popularity. And I ask you to acknowledge these. The town has lost almost entirely its racial and economic diversity. Increased home values drastically affect the taxes of people who live here but don't benefit economically from tourism. Also, it's just not easy to live next to someone's summer vacation for 4 or 5 months of the year. It just isn't. To be a community, we need full-time residents. On my block, 1/3 of the houses are full-time, 1/3 are part-time, and 1/3 are short-term rentals. If those part-times become short-term rentals, there is no way these people can be accommodated in our town. I'm asking you to cap the number of short-term rentals in Cape Charles and to freeze it now while you deliberate on the details of those policies. We are at a saturation point. In summer, parking is a real and persistent problem for residents, especially those who live close to the beach or are surrounded by rental houses that accommodate large families with multiple cars and multiple golf carts. There is nearly no room on the beach. Long wait times at restaurants in summer affect locals and tourists alike. Trash piles up and overflows. Grocery shelves are often empty in the summer. Additionally, a concern of mine is our groundwater and wastewater capacity. In 2021, our daily groundwater withdrawal was at 93% of limit. And in July of 2021, wastewater treatment peaked above 95% of the capacity of the plant, and it's predicted to be exceeded by 2026. We have to find balance. In addition to limiting numbers, I would ask you to adopt and enforce a set of rules for all rentals that will improve the quality of life for your constituents. Some suggestions: limits on parking, both where to park and how many spaces are available to renters. Golf carts should not be parked on residential streets or sidewalks. Quiet-ish hours, not just 9 or 10 at night, but all day, because people live and work here. Someone's desire to listen to loud music or make noise is not more important than my right to enjoy my home and garden and to work uninterrupted in my home office. I would also suggest we request people dress appropriately and use appropriate language. I've heard too much and I've seen way too much. In short, this is a place where people live, and visitors should be good neighbors while they're here. And finally, in order for the outcome of your deliberations on this topic to be ethical and not vulnerable to legal challenge, this must be a fair and transparent process. Council members with financial interest in tourism should not be voting, and the ad hoc committee should include an equal number of members with no financial interest in tourism, or their recommendations cannot be reasonably seen as objective. Your constituents, the voters who live full-time in Cape Charles, want a vital, year-round community, and I ask you to make this a priority and devote resources and attention to this goal before it is no longer possible. And I do thank you for your time and for listening to us tonight.
What block are you on?
100 block of Tazewell. The first block of Tazewell. Everyone on Tazewell walks by my house. I see a lot of tattoos and piercings.
All right.
I'm just going to pass these around and let people pass it amongst themselves.
Hey, Jeff, send it back over here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
good evening. My name is Jim Metz. My wife and I own a vacation home in the Sea Cottages section of the Historic District. In the interest of full disclosure, we offered our house part-time as a short-term rental for 8 years, ending in 2017. Regulating STRs is not fundamentally about trash pickup and such. It is fundamentally about the intent of Section 3.2 of the town's zoning regulations for District R1, to wit, to provide quiet, medium-density, single-family residential development The regulations are designed to stabilize and protect the essential characteristics of the district, to promote and encourage a suitable environment for family life, and to restrict all activities of a commercial nature. As a zoning ordinance, permitted and conditional uses of the properties in the district must be explicitly listed. In the posted ordinance revised January 19th, 2023, there is no mention of short-term rentals as either permitted or conditional use. During a work session of the Town Council and the Planning Commission on August 21st, 2023, proposed amendments to the ordinance were discussed. With regard to the proposed changes to Section 3.2, the zoning administrator recommended striking short-term rentals until the subcommittee completes its work. This is where we are. Short-term rentals are not a permitted or conditional use of property in zoning district R1. The challenge is to define the regulations that will bring short-term rentals into compliance with the intent of Section 3.2. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julie Jones, and we live at 538 Monroe Avenue. And I'd just like to talk about what the sense of community means to us. When Sam and I bought our wonderful old house in the Historic District in 2015, we knew that we loved the house and the town, but had no idea that the best part of owning a home in Cape Charles would be the incredible sense of community. Here are some examples of conversations and experiences we have had with our neighbors in the 500 block of Monroe. Can you recommend a house painter, plumber, electrician, dentist, roofer, contractor, vet? Was at Baines Market and the strawberries are in, so I brought you a quart. Peaches are in at Pickett's Harbor. Do you want to come over and share a peach cobbler? Sharing cookies and pumpkin bread in December. There's a concert in the park tonight. Want to go together? There's a performance at Palace Theater tonight. Want to go together? If you put cardboard down in your garden, it will keep the weeds down. Here's a wedding gift for your son and his new wife. Here's a book for your granddaughter, You Are My Sunshine, her favorite song. I know you've been looking for a contractor to build your garage. Here's the name of one we used and like. I noticed FedEx left your Chewy delivery on the sidewalk, and it's starting to rain, so I put it on the porch for you, and that was 3 really heavy bags of cat litter. I heard it was supposed to be really windy. Would you mind putting my chairs down on the porch? Hearing my neighbor play his guitar on his porch while weeding our flower bed. Singing and playing instruments on the front porch, and our mailman joins in. I noticed your front storm door is open. Do you want us to close it for you? I noticed your attic window is open. It's January. Do you want us to close it for you? I noticed your tulips, magnolia, etc. is blooming, and since you aren't here, I sent you a photo. Have you tried the new restaurant in town? We have tickets for the garden tour that we can't use. Would you like them? What kind of grass seed do you use? What do I need to attract monarch butterflies? Do you have monarch caterpillars in your garden yet? I could bring you some milkweed for your monarch caterpillars. What kind of flower, plant, tree is that in your yard? I noticed your Christmas lights are flashing. Do you want me to unplug them for you? They look like a strobe. So, anyhow. I noticed a bird going into a vent in your attic. Can you recommend someone to install a chimney cap? Previous owners of your house had a pig. And the whole block laughing together at a concert in the park when the band plays Year of the Cat, then a Buddy Holly song, because an abandoned cat has adopted you, and you named it Buddy Holly. When you buy a house, you have no idea what kind of neighbors you might get, but in our case, we were blessed with the best. There was someone from Madagascar who spoke French, an attorney, State Department retiree, someone who grew up in Cape Charles and had rented the same house for 30-plus years, young families with kids, watermen, state troopers, landscapers, the editor of The Mirror. A wonderful, diverse group of people. Plus, we knew the names of all the dogs and cats. BB, Zeke, Freddie, Rudy, Bob, Putty, Buddy Holly, and of course, Buttercup, everyone's favorite whippet about town. But in 2020, that all started to change when a neighbor's house was sold and was turned into an STR. First one in our block. Now our block is 40% STRs, and with each new one, we lose some of that sense of community. When we received the text there was a police chase that ended in the park with the driver at large, we immediately started calling and texting our neighbors, many of whom live alone, to lock their doors, turn on the outside lights, stay inside, and then ask, are you okay? Do you want someone to stay with you, or do you want to come to our house? And when the unthinkable tragedy happened and we lost someone who it seems everyone knew, we found comfort in sharing stories about how we knew her and what she meant to us. If you live in the historic district of Cape Charles, you know how blessed you are. Beautiful homes, beautiful yards, lots of trees, and when you go for a walk, you almost always see someone you know, a sense of community, a feeling of being safe. But when 40% of your block sits dark and empty from September through May, that is not a feeling of safety or a community. And from May through September, when 40% of the houses in your block are filled with strangers, that is also not a feeling of being safe or a sense of community. Members of Town Council, STRs have been an issue since 2017, and in spite of multiple opportunities to regulate them, you've done nothing. Maybe where you live, you don't have STRs surrounding you. Maybe you still know all your neighbors. But when 40% of the houses in your block are inhabited by strangers, that is a problem for those of us who live here. Since 2019, every house that is sold in our block, except for one, has been turned into an STR. Would you please follow the example of the City of Hampton and pause the approval of any more STRs till you can formulate and pass ordinances or regulations to manage the number of STRs that are threatening our sense of community? As elected officials, your job is to protect us, and that means putting aside any personal interest you may have in STRs and preserving what is so precious to everyone who lives in this little town, a sense of community. When I sit with my remaining neighbors on our porch or theirs, I like to think perhaps we are maintaining the way of life that was in Cape Charles 100 years ago. Please help us not to lose this.
I don't have a prepared statement, but I'm just going to vent until you give me the look that tells me to stop talking. So I get how we all got here.
Name.
I apologize. My name's Clayton Newman. I live on at 10 Randolph. My mother lived here or moved here over 30 years ago. We've owned property here for 20 years. Almost 30. No, 22. Please, ma'am. Adam. Decided to move here full-time in 2000, and now live here, obviously, full-time. So I can tell you that I'm as much of a come here as anybody else in this room. But those neighborhood conversations that were just listed, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, because let me go back. I get how we got here, and I really do think it's so important that the people in this room can have conversations about this topic and maybe not follow the examples that are set for us on bigger political platforms of how to deal with one another. Because I guarantee you there's people in this room that I know and respect that may disagree with me, and that's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's not vilify, I don't want to start a sign war in this town, although 50 people have wanted me to do that, and I don't want to do that. but there is more of a sense of community in this town today than there has been in a long time. And I guarantee you, none of those conversations were being held on my mom's street 30 years ago. And I can point out as many bad actor permanent neighbors who lived here, and as many tattoos and people throwing profanity out at me that lived here all the time as there are people who visit. So I don't know what your experiences are, and if you're having bad ones, I truly feel for you. I don't want you to live in a place where you're uncomfortable, or don't feel safe, don't feel able to enjoy the birds and everything that's around you. But to put all of this on short-term rentals, I feel is unfair. Because we're not Hampton, we are not Richmond, where there are viable, or Savannah, viable short-term rental crises in place where they are taking up housing from people who don't otherwise have access to it. We have no health care. Our education, although I have good friends who came out of this public school system, and there are success stories from this public school system, at the very least, they don't score well if you're thinking about moving here and you look it up online. We have no employers. There are countless Fortune 500 employers in Richmond and Savannah and all the places that people like to point out to try to compare us to. We have no amenities for the most part. We had a hospital that was closer to us 30 years ago than we do today. We're 45 minutes now away from that level of health care. And short-term rentals were the thing that kind of opened the door to some tax revenue and some activity and a place to go out to dinner. And thank God for the people who've now grown up here, who've been able to stay here in large part because there is now an industry here, and it's tourism. And it didn't happen by accident. Like, after we narrowly escaped having a maximum security state prison here in 1995, and people fought that down by a whisper, people got together in the Methodist Church. We had vision sessions. My mom was part of many of those where we said, how do we breathe some life back here? How do we get people the chance to stay? How do we give people the chance to want to move here? You know, this iconic place that people talk about where these homes are all filled with young families, we just came from there. They were available. Half the homes in this town were for sale. Everybody left because of all the things that I just listed. And I just think you just got to be careful. And I see people shaking their heads at me, and that's fine. That's okay. I may be wrong. You don't hear many people say that. But I'm afraid because I don't want to go back to that place. I don't think any of the people in this room want to live in that town because you make it like these short-term rental people are these external villains, like these corporations that do exist in Richmond, that do exist in large markets, who are gobbling up property because it's a good investment, because they have a 52-week-a-year opportunity to make money off those properties. We have a 2-month season with a couple hot shoulders and a couple events like the garden tour that will bring some people in, but we don't have the people who are spending $1 million right now to buy these homes. If you do a spreadsheet, that's a bad investment if you think that's a moneymaker. Short-term rental people in this town are people who love it here. We rented our house out for a short time while our kids were involved in sports and before we could be here more often, and those people loved it here. So many people who volunteer for events, for the first Festive Fridays in December, who direct traffic will stop me and say, you know, we're here because we stayed at your house 15 years ago. And now they're part of our community. And the community here is so strong. I mean, it's just so obvious. I mean, I have those same conversations. We walk our dog around this town almost every day. And not a day goes by when I don't see a current member or a council member or one of the past 2 mayors or a business owner or a family member. I mean, and community is so up and down the shore, too. It's not just your block. Our block used to be, by the way, 5 vacation rentals and a B&B and 2 residents. Now we have 1. We have 1 short-term rental, no B&B, 5 full-time people, and 5 second homeowners. And I think a lot of what people don't like, and I'll wrap up because I know everybody wants to have a chance. What we don't like, what some people don't like, is that there's a lot of people here now in the summer. And there's going to continue to be a lot of people here now. Whether they're full-time like me, I'm the biggest violator. I mean, I admit it, I will fall on the sword. better come up with a rule that affects me as much as the short-term rental next door to you, because I have fun here. My house is full in the summer. My son comes home from college with 6 fraternity brothers, each with their own car. We listen to music in the backyard and laugh and have a good time, and we go to the beach. And I'm every bit as much what shouldn't be here, I guess, as everybody else. But whether it's me or people with second homes who do all those same things, or full-time people who or short-term rentals, what we're not prepared for, evidently, is that density. And if our infrastructure can't handle it, we should stop issuing building permits. Because why are we building houses that we don't want people to use? Summers when they're going to use them. If that's putting an unfair tax on our ability to handle that many people, we should stop having any more builds happen. I could go on for hours, and I appreciate this much time even, but I just wanted to offer some alternative viewpoints. Thank you.
Richard Berger, 550 Madison, speaking tonight on behalf of a group of Historic District residents who have been meeting for the past several months regarding the issue of short-term rentals. We have a number of recommendations to suggest, and I have copies available for you if you wish. There should be an immediate pause on new business licenses for STR properties until problems are addressed by the ad hoc committee in their November 2nd, 2023 report are resolved and the town is in compliance with current zoning ordinances. The town should hire an STR administrator on town staff to be paid for by the fees charged to STR owners. In keeping with the ad hoc committee's recommendation, this person will create and maintain an STR registry. The town should hire a consultant to study and make recommendations for STR density rates in conformance with town characteristics and applied on a block-by-block basis. STR license waivers in excess of the established density limits should not be granted for the rehabilitation of dilapidated homes. We support the committee's recommendation, and by the way, thank you, those of you on the ad hoc committee, for your recommendations. We support the committee's recommendation for the annual renewal of business licenses for STRs. However, we do not support business licenses to be transferable on the sale of property or transfer of ownership. Licenses for a new owner or ownership would expire with the expiration date of the current STR license. All existing STR properties with valid STR permit will automatically or should automatically be approved for a renewal of their permit and grandfathered in regardless of density for a period of 5 years from the effective date of STR density regulations. In order to prove eligibility for grandfathering, the property owner must prove that the property was rented out for a minimum of 90 days during each of the previous 2 calendar years. Just because you bought a license doesn't mean you can call it an STR. Occupancy limits per STR property need to be established and enforced, I think we all agree. Fix the parking problem. Appoint a committee or hire a consultant to address parking for excess short-term rental vehicles. Until a more permanent solution can be established, please limit occupancy based on on-site and frontage parking availability of each STR property. We agree with the committee's recommendation number 13 regarding trash cans. We would like to add further that trash be required to be removed from STR property by cleaning staff or by assigns within 24 hours of each rental stay turnover. We are in support of the committee's recommendation number 10 regarding STR license suspensions, except that licenses should be suspended within 7 calendar days for qualifying violations. Thank you.
Am I next? Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Wygan, and I am a full-time resident and homeowner here in the Historic District of Cape Charles, as well as, I'm a full-time resident and homeowner here in Cape Charles, as well as a business owner here in the district. And I'm well aware short-term rentals has been a hot topic, and I think some of these penalties and the regulations is going along the right route. However, my hair on my arm stands up when I hear cap or limit, because basically as a business owner, you're telling me that you're going to cap my future economic status or the ability to actually retire here and live here when I'm not working anymore. So I feel that, totally went off my speech, but I feel that some of these regulations, especially getting the people that are proclaimed self-managed STRs, Airbnbs themselves, I believe that having a full-time responsible management company or somebody that's boots in the ground locally that will respond to these violations or respond to any complaints from the citizens. I mean, I live next to an STR, so people are always partying in the backyard. So it just, I guess it's your tolerance level, and if you feel it's after the quiet hours at 9 or 10 o'clock, whatever it is, then there should be some sort of registry or at least a list on the town council where it has everybody's contact of who their local representative is, whether it's a realtor or somebody like our business, Live Localish, their concierge service, that we can respond to that and post that they had a violation. If it's something that they won't change or won't leave, because I have asked people to leave before when they have done things that have violated the town rules. If they won't leave, then that's when the police would get involved. But we can't expect our police to have the wherewithal to be able to respond to everybody's complaints. So I think that's where the management companies, the realty companies come as kind of the liaison between the two. And I think this is totally doable. I forgot your name over here, but he mentioned the prisons, the chicken farms and the prisons that were coming here in the 1990s. This was a totally different scenario. And if it weren't for tourism, this town would be nothing like it is now. And I know for a fact that if we cannot grow our business, then we would not have any future being able to retire here, because already our house prices are right up there for what we could sell it for. So I think that really looking at regulations and violations and a penalty system is something that will really kind of weed out those people that think they can do it on their own, because their license will be quickly revoked if that's the case. Anyway, I just hope that you guys take that into consideration, because it would really affect businesses. Our business has been here 13 years now, but we just took it over 3 years ago. And we really want it to grow, and we want it to thrive. And I think we can all kind of get along, and there's a happy balance. I just know in my heart that, hey, summer season's coming, there's going to be a lot of people next door. That's kind of what you have to live with. But I came here for a reason, and I came here because I love this town, I love the community, and I don't feel like having vacation rentals deters from that. It's just about how to balance it and how to control it and how to regulate it. So thank you for listening.
Yeah. All right. Oh, okay, sorry.
Let me start off. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm going to try to edit this a little bit, because much of what I have in here has been covered by others. First of all, relative to comments over here, reasonable people can reasonably disagree. I agree with all the comments that have been made in support of regulating short-term rentals, and particularly the recommendation to put a limit on the total number of such rentals. I want to make something clear. I am not advocating for the elimination of short-term rentals. They provide a valuable economic impetus to our town, support businesses and employment. I do believe that they need to be limited to a sensible number and density, so that Cape Charles is not overwhelmed during the season and a ghost town the rest of the time. I also strongly believe, as has been proposed by some others, that a temporary pause in allowing additional such rentals should be put into place with all possible speed while the many details of the other regulations are worked out. I applaud council and Mr. Hosey for initiating this discussion, for forming this committee. I think that this was a good thing to do. I applaud what you're doing, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. I want to note, though, the committee, has been noted before, the committee recommended setting a cap on STRs. It was number 2 on their priority list, and that was after proposing an implementation date. And that indicates to me that they attached a high importance to putting a limit on it, to put a pause on it. So all the reasons for this have been covered in great detail by the people who've preceded me. I do want to note, I'm not going to go through them, you all know what they are. I do want to note that these ideals that have been mentioned are formalized as goals in our strategic plan. So as a town, as a community, we've already embraced them. Okay, we want to be Mayberry, we don't want to be Disneyland. Our strategic plan also includes a goal to advance a variety of housing options for younger families and workforce housing. If a significant number of houses are taken up by STRs, it will destroy the opportunity for young families to move here and become part of the community. This will ultimately detract from the town economically as well as socially. I have one final request. Mr. Metz brought up the notion of what is allowed and what is not allowed by the R2, the section 3.2 R1, a family residential district. I'd ask that you all get together with the town attorney, and find out if STRs are even legal in the R1 district according to our zoning, our current zoning ordinance. They are not covered by permitted uses. They're not covered by conditional uses. And as far as I know, none of them has ever been issued a conditional use permit. So I'm not an attorney. I may or may not be legal to do it, but get an attorney's opinion. Let's find out what's going on here and find out whether they're legal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask, Mr. Hosey, can you respond to the priority system? Because we didn't really necessarily put those items in a priority fashion.
That's correct. The committee did not prioritize those
Yeah,
recommendations.
I just want to clarify that.
Also, because a couple of people have mentioned it, and I have the mic at the moment, I will state that pausing additional STRs is, we don't have a mechanism to do that. Okay, so you don't need a permit now to operate an STR. You just need a business license. We could deny a business license, but all that does is stop someone from paying their lawful taxes. So I mean, we don't have a mechanism to stop it.
Can you speak into the microphone? They're having a hard time hearing you back there.
But, anyway, so we've looked at that. We've looked at that before as whether we could put a short-term moratorium on these things, and we really don't have a mechanism to do that. All we could do is deny their business license, which all that does is deny them the opportunity to pay their taxes. So we do, we need to look into the zoning ordinance, as you said, George. We need to do that, and we will. There's no easy option for us to just say no more STRs for now, because it's just been a use that everyone's done up until now.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
Well, sorry. Look, clearly I don't know how difficult that would be to do. I don't know what the penalties are for not having a business license when you are a business and you are supposed to have a business license. But to say that they would not be, the only result would they would not be paying taxes, that strikes me as a little odd. Because if you, for example, if you don't get a driver's license and you are caught, you're in for a huge fine. So I don't know what the laws are, I don't know what the ordinances are relative to having a business license in this town. I'd ask you please to look into that as well, because if that's the case, I could imagine some people with STRs saying, I'm not going to get a business license and I'm not going to pay the taxes, I'm done. If there's no penalty for not having a business
I
license.
think you misunderstood me.
Beg your pardon?
I think, sorry, this thing's not working very well. Does that work better?
No, not at all.
Are these things on? What I meant to say was that the town doesn't have a mechanism to stop somebody. The only thing we could do is if someone came to the town and said, I want to open up an STR and I want to get my business license, the town could say, no, you can't have one. Okay? But if we did that, all we're going to do is prevent them from paying their taxes. So that's what we're saying. So I'm not saying that we're going to allow people to not have, the people can just choose not to. I'm saying the only thing we thought of initially, there we go, it seems to be working now.
That's better. Mine's working a lot better now,
Yeah.
too. Thank you.
So anyway, it is something we're looking at, and we'll look at the zoning code, but there's not an easy mechanism for us to just say, no more STRs. We just don't have anything on the books to do that right now. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Jose, I can well imagine that it's not easy. Ain't nothing easy.
No.
And if we're going to control this, we have to know where the STRs are, and we have to have some penalties for enforcement for whatever regulations they do break. And as an example, if you don't have a business license, I think that's a big deal. And I think there should be some.
And there is. If somebody chooses not to get a business license, there is a penalty, and we do enforce it.
Okay, so that would be a way to limit the number of short-term rentals initially, without having to do anything. Correct? Or, okay, shall I should shut up now.
Now we have one over.
Hello. Sorry, I'm nervous. My name's Erin Foster. My husband and I have a house at 125 Strawberry Street, and we are the enemy. We are 100% vacation rental home. We rent all year. We open our home to families that fall in love with Cape Charles the exact same way that we very much so fell in love with this town. So just a few thoughts, just hearing, because the reason we wanted to come tonight was not to necessarily propose any cap or don't do this, but just to hear what you all's concerns were, because we want to know. And honestly, we don't hear a lot of them, which if the concerns are out there, we should know them as vacation homeowners, which means you should tell us. But anyways, a few points. Like I said, I'm nervous. Community. One question would be, why are so many people selling their homes and vacation homes buying them? Why are your neighbors leaving? Like, is it because houses, they can make a lot of money? I don't know, I'm curious, but people, you can't stop your neighbor from buying a home, and it's unfair to get upset that my family bought the home and have chosen to and essentially raise our children here multiple weeks every summer, and every weekend we can get here. And then because we're not two house people, we have to rent it so that we can be with you and make the money to help pay for that. But also in response to just something that was mentioned, the community and the neighbors, the conversations that you have with neighbors and have had with neighbors, we have had all those same conversations. We've been welcomed into our block by lovely people that want to know our family, want to know our story, want to help us plant stuff. They mulch for us sometimes. They get packages. They do all of the same things. Community is not lost because I rent my home. And I'm sorry it is where you rent your home, and I encourage you to talk to your neighbor. Tell them your concerns, and if you do, and those concerns aren't met, maybe that's when you start escalating things. I don't know, but I just am having such a different experience, and I'm having a hard time, I guess, understanding that. But a few things. I'm on the Vacation Homeowners Board, which is a group in town that was started because of this. We wanted to know what your concerns were. We wanted to be a good neighbor, and I know a lot of you say that we're self-serving, and yes, we own a vacation rental home, so.
How many are on that group?
On the board or in the whole group?
Whole group. Just so you know.
Probably 400 people, but those are also Bay Creek. Those are parents who own a home with their children. It's a very big group. We're
Not small.
Right.
So people know it.
292. Okay, I was way off. Okay, thank you. And just because I want you to understand that we are not self-serving, and I hope you know that most of us that bought homes here and in this group, we love this town. Like, if we could live here, we would. My husband has to go to work at Capital One every day, and it's really annoying because during COVID, when he didn't have to go every day and he could work from home, we were making plans to move here. Like, we all want to be here with you. We love this place. 90% of us. I'd say there are a few people that bought because it was ranked real high on a good place to invest your money, but as someone else said, it is not. Like, pay $1 million for a home and you're like in the black you will be forever. It's never going to work out for you. Red. I'm not a business person. I bought a home here. I'm obviously not a business person. I'm sorry. Okay, but what I wanted to say was, as a group, just in the last 3 years, we have in some form donated over $25,000 to this town. Like, that's a lot of money, and it's not because look at us. We don't announce. Only thing we let you know that we do is First Day in the Bay and the Cookie Trail. We sponsor families. We provide meals for families in need. We sponsored a cat's vet bill. Like, I don't even know why we did that, but we did. It was a cute cat, but I don't know. Fire department fundraisers, the 4th of July movie that your families get to enjoy, local coat drives and bike drives, families that are affected by house fire, festive Fridays. The point is like, we want to be here with you, and we love this town. And I hate that we're seen so differently than that. And as far as the house price thing goes, we're experiencing the same thing in Richmond. All the prices are crazy. The taxes are crazy. I don't know that it's a localized thing to the Eastern Shore or Cape Charles. Because it sucks for us in Richmond too, so it's like double whammy here in Richmond. But I don't know what the answer is, but to drive away tourism, these houses are just going to sit empty. I don't know that people are going to come. I think it is more of a town that is going to be, all of us that own vacation homes right now, we sit on our porch and we talk about how when we live here one day and we retire here and this is our place. And, you know, the sense of community isn't helped by signs in the yard saying, welcome on my front porch, screw you in the yard. It's really, I mean, it hurt. It's like really hard to walk around, and it has wrong grammar, but that's a whole nother story. But it's hard to walk around town and see, like, we hate you, we hate you, we hate you. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I love you, and I love this town, and please talk to us. Come to our board. Our board is very happy to address things. That's, again, why we were created. We came up with golf cart rules because we saw people that own vacation homes driving with their kids in their lap. And we're like, you're being a bad example. We need you to be a good example for the visitors. I don't know, now I'm rambling, but and I'm really nervous. But all that to say is that I'm sorry if you've had a bad experience with a vacation rental. And if it's us, please talk to us. We'll make it right. We will do what we need to do because we love this town, and we're not here to make money, I promise.
You're good.
Jim Granger, full-time.
Yep.
Jim Granger, full-time voting resident of Cape Charles, 524 Jefferson Avenue. Didn't have a whole lot of prepared remarks. I will say that I agree with the folks who have spoken in favor of eliminating short-term rentals. I will also say limit. I'm not saying get rid of them all. I know a lot of people who have them. I know a lot of owners that are good people and everything else like that. Frankly, the issue is more with the renters than the rental owners. So there are issues with parking. We've discussed that. There are issues with trash overflowing. We've discussed that. The noise, the lights, the kids driving golf carts, and those things are real issues in the summer. And the fact that we have kind of a ghost town in the off-season bothers me. When we talk about density, it's not just, if you talk about putting a cap on things, it's not just about overall numbers, but it's also about blocks. There are definitely blocks that have got a much higher concentration of short-term rentals than other blocks. And those you can drive through town in the off-season, and it's, nothing going on. I look at my block, and, from all the way down, there's virtually nothing until you get to Phil and Diane's. So I thank you for listening to us. I thank you for addressing the issue. And it's not an issue, it is a problem. I will also say one for the property values and all. Yeah, my property has gone up in value. The 18 means nothing to me unless I sell it, which I don't plan to do because I plan to live here forever. You can plant me in the ground when I'm done, but all it's done right now instead of increase property value is just jack my taxes through the roof. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elise McMath. My address is 304 Tazewell Avenue. I'm a fourth generation to the town and the house. I don't have a particularly strong opinion, but I just wanted to make some observations. I think we would get a lot further if we tried not to ostracize or isolate other people that have real stakes in the conversation that we're talking about, and trying to make a more inclusive argument, find common ground. I think we all don't enjoy our taxes going up, right? I also can speak from experience. I just wanted to share in case it would sway anyone's opinion, but I would like to keep the house in my family, and so if it ever came to a point where I needed to rent it out as a short-term rental, I would like the opportunity to be able to do that. However, I don't know if I would ever need to if the taxes would stop going up. So, you know, I just wish there was more of a middle ground where we were kind of speaking about how it affects different groups of people. I think maybe there's a certain problem that everyone is experiencing, and maybe if we focused more on what we all had in common, we'd get a lot further and wouldn't have polarized yard signs all over town. It's just kind of sad. So anyways.
Want to do fresh hands?
I'll ring you up. Right behind you. And then Katie over here.
My name is Craig Sutherland, and I live with my wife Rita at 649 Randolph Avenue. We're full-time residents and have been in town since the year 2000. We do not have a short-term rental, but would like to oppose a cap on a short-term rental for all of the reasons that other people have addressed, plus one. We have been here, as I said, 24 years. We plan to die here. But in case we can't, in case we have to sell for reasons that we are not looking forward to, capping an STR would diminish the value of our resale property. We would not be able to sell it for the price that a person owning an STR could do so. And for that reason, plus all of the others, we oppose a cap on STR. Let the market decide.
You're up next. State your name and location.
Good evening, John Dempster from the Shanty. A lot of good stuff here from everybody, and I actually would like to, sorry, did I cut off? Sorry, a couple of things. This gentleman, I'm sorry, just made me think of something. I'll tell you a quick story. I just got back from Florida. Unfortunately, my father was in the ICU for a few weeks. We didn't think he was going to make it. My stepmother's desire is to continue to live in her home after he passes, but without his VA benefits, she won't be able to. While we were there, we're making arrangements to try to figure out how we could potentially build an apartment above their garage for her to have an Airbnb, to have the income she would need to remain in the home that they built together. That's not what I wanted to speak, but it spoke to me. A couple of things on this. I think, John, great job in the beginning. I think that really we need to zoom out a little bit on this. You've got two issues really here. You've got a vote on capping, and then you've got a management of existing or potentially, you know, more STRs down the road. I don't think putting the two together on one document is a really great idea. I think that we really need to have more information before you can even consider a cap on STRs as far as what type of, and I would love to hear back from anybody if you have some information, you know, what does that do for market value to homes? If we pass a cap on STRs and somebody's got a house on Tazewell that has previously done an STR or can do STRs, their home suddenly more valuable than a full-time resident who doesn't have that ability anymore, right? And I don't know if there's been any talk on that amongst council, or is there any information on that?
That's why there's no
Is it because of the market values?
Yeah, market value is unfair, it's an unfair advantage to say have the STR transfer with the house. It's crazy. That's not gonna work. Can't.
Well, that's just one line item on the document. That can be striked easily, right?
Yes.
So-
All of it can be strike. These are just ideas right now.
Sure. I just want to make sure that we're not bundling the two together, because you've got two different approaches here. You've got a cap and you've got management. They're separate topics.
Yeah, there's no bundling there.
Okay.
They're all separate ideas.
Okay. And also, I'm curious to know if we've done any research on existing communities that have done this in the past. This is kind of a pioneer issue here. You know, Airbnb wasn't around 15 years ago, so this is not a lot of history here to deal with and see who's done what and what works.
But there was short-term rental for a long time.
Okay.
It's not Airbnb that's being marketed through that particular.
Well, it's certainly a lot more prominent now because of that.
I mean, I rented my house on Harbor Avenue, 407, short-term rentals, and long-term cheap MJ Palm. So we did it both. We did like the short-term, this is kind of a pain in the ass. So we
Yeah.
decided to go with long-term. That was my experience, that's all.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that we're separating the two issues. Also, would love to see some more research on what it might mean down the road to
and that's what we're
values
doing.
before anybody thinks about a vote.
And that's what me and my committee are doing. We're trying to dig into that research right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I'll add, one of the studies that we did just pass around to the committee that we'll talk about, there was a study done with regards to Palm Springs out in California. And what they were looking at is home values, all housing aspects relative to that community and neighboring communities and the county and the state to look at what happens when short-term rental restrictions are put in place. And they looked at before and after. So we have some indication that there's information out there relative to that will be discussed.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Katie, all the way back in the corner.
I thought you had somebody up here front.
All the way back.
All in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, all the way over.
Oh. Who wants to speak over here? Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I'm nervous as well. My name is Susie Charnick. I was born and raised here on the shore, so I have a little bit of personal and business. I'm also a realtor with Long & Foster, and I'm a senior property manager with Coastal Shore Vacations, which is a family-owned business, and we've been doing short-term rentals and long-term rentals for 25 years. So on that side of it, there's plenty of regulations that are in place that, work. But just not getting into that, I would just simply ask on that aspect of it that when you're an established business like that, you know that a lot of your people are returning guests. So I just simply ask that we expand this community and, make them feel welcome. Like, talk to the kids, talk to them, and just make them want to come back next summer. And that way you know that you have the returning families coming back. And, it's not, again, not going down that way, but, on the personal side of it, I mean, growing up on the shore, like, I'm sure a lot of you guys remember, like, we weren't allowed in certain parts of Cape Charles. It's just like, it was not the town that you wanted to be. And now, it's like, you get a group of friends and you come and enjoy a nice lunch, you get to walk all the shops, and a lot of that wouldn't be possible without all of our guests. So, just putting that out there.
Hi, everyone. Cynthia Emmerich, 420 Randolph Avenue. I did submit written comments because I was hoping not to speak. I will, instead of reiterating what I wrote, I will address your question, John. And when I sent in my written comments, I included an article from Harvard Business Review. They actually looked at 15 metropolitan areas across the United States, looking at what is the correlation, impact, if you will, of putting in STR restrictions and things like development, home values, and, as you could imagine, taxes, which follow the second one. And what they found was a significant negative impact on development as measured by permits. So in communities that implemented STRs, they saw a drop in permits anywhere from like 10 to 15%. Conversely, the ones who did not put the restrictions in place, they saw the bump up that you would expect. And there was a significant negative impact on home values and then subsequently the revenues flowing into the different municipalities. So the data are there. I did this, I'm a researcher by trade, so I did a quick search. It's not the end all and be all, but Harvard Business Review is a pretty darn respected outlet.
All right, can I respond to that? I'm also a researcher kind of person. All right, so I had already gotten to your article, but I appreciate you attaching it to your letter. And I agree in there that it's particularly around the 15 major metropolitan areas that they had selected. And they've come to the conclusion that the property values did decrease, but they were talking in the billions, so when you're talking the metropolitan area. So to translate that into what is the impact to an individual in those, you can't really tell, but it does state that you have a reduction in property values. However, it goes on to talk about two things that I found interesting. It said, rather than enforcing blanket restrictions that hinder growth, recommend creating targeted policies that meet local needs. For example, encourage STR development for properties in distressed neighborhoods, and they had talked Chicago as being it. The other thing I found interesting is that similarly, to address gentrification, which we are talking here too, the total amount of space available for STR use could be capped at a percentage of the available housing capacity, thus encouraging the development of long-term housing alongside STRs. So there's more to the story than some people are picking and choosing some of the issues that they bring to the table. And that I just wanted to fill in the blanks on some things that I came across.
I appreciate that. I wanted to add to the data point that is Palm Springs and give us a broader sample.
And that was an excellent survey. That it was interesting because they went through, the different aspects that you look at, a realtor would look on, parameters around housing. I don't have the study with me, but I just have. They concluded drawing a cause and effect relationship is a stretch. This is STR restrictions and home values. They can't say with confidence that Palm Springs' new STR policies are the culprit of the recent market changes. A perfect storm is created, with the fall off of COVID market, interest rates getting cranked up, and also then the city council adopting their regulations. So again, they couldn't, through their particular study, conclude the major impact, although we know intuitively that it does.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Gray, and I just wanted to talk for a few minutes. I know a lot of you in here. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of you on Cape Charles Main Street, including Councilman Grossman. I remember when Councilman Grossman and I were on the Main Street board together, one of the things, Paul, that you were especially good about and helpful about was the issue of affordable housing in the area, which when I came here, I had no idea was an issue, and yet it is. And I appreciated your research then, and I appreciate it now. I think for many of us here, there seems to be some indication that it's an us or them kind of thing, and I don't think that's appropriate. The young lady who is right over here behind me, I think, said it beautifully. She said, it doesn't have to be a good versus evil sort of thing. And from my own perspective, I have an opinion, which I'll get to, but I do want to say, when I look at personal friends like Aaron and Ryan Foster sitting over here, I can't think of anybody that I know personally who's done any more for the town of Cape Charles. I mean, these folks got here. Aaron has jumped in. She's participated, rolled up her sleeves on the Cape Charles Main Street board. She has brought a breath of fresh air in terms of new vision and, ideas and experiences from other locations that I think have been great for this town, and she's never slowed down in any of that. And so I would applaud Erin and anybody like her who is making that investment in Cape Charles. And I think I come back to something that that John Dempster said a minute ago. He said it's not a you got to do both of them, and I think that's absolutely right. I think the most important thing that we can do right now, recognizing that the devil's in the details, it's always the case. And those details can be, you know, how many parking, you know, spaces do you have? What's the occupancy per the residents? What is the noise issue? How do you deal with all of these are really important things to deal with. I'm hearing from Aaron, for example, that they would welcome the chance to participate in, you know, a vetting and a discussion and a positive solution for all of this. But here's what I think. I think it's so important, and I think we can't wait. And Mr. Hosey, I would respectfully say I have a different view than you do of the council's ability today to put a pause on the expansion. And that's what I'm going to ask the council to consider. Now, and I'll come back to why I believe that's true, but I do want to talk about what a pause would give us. I mean, you think about this, we've had studies that go back last year, maybe that's not the only one, and look, I'm going to ask you to forgive me because I'm not totally up to speed on every study that's happened about this. One thing I do know, though, from my own research, is that a lot of communities, not only in Virginia but elsewhere, some of them are like ours, some are way bigger, but a lot of communities have put a stop in, either while they consider it, or, and by stop I mean, you know, an expansion issue, while they consider what the rules are going to be, or maybe they're just not going to let any more within a particular density. All these are appropriate questions for debate by reasonable people as we're going through this. But if you can please allow everybody to catch their breath with a pause in this while council and management have the ability to vet and come up with a comprehensive set of, and I'm going to say it, rules, regulations that address the things that I think everyone in this room would say ought to be addressed. I don't think the STR owners contend that they should have people who stay up all night and bang the gong, or that, you know, they can have 20 parking spaces. I don't think anybody of them think that, and yet that's what happens sometimes. It's not their fault. But it does happen sometimes, and I think they would be a wholehearted participant in a discussion about that sort of thing. But Mr. Hosey, to come back to the reason that I have a difference of opinion with you about council's ability to do something today is this. You have zoning regulations in the town, and you've heard about this from Mr. Proto and other speakers this evening. We do have zoning regulations, and anything that can go on within the town has to fit within the zoning. And we have zoning for permitted uses. And it talks about the stuff I think Mr. Proto brought up with you. I'm not going to go back and read it all to you again. You know what the ordinance says, but you also know what it doesn't say. And what it doesn't say it doesn't say that. Mr. Mayor, I feel your pain. I've had this happen all too often myself. No, but what it doesn't say, yes, sir.
There's a lot of by rights in there that you don't have to listen.
I'm sorry?
A lot of by rights you do not have to listen.
That's why I just said I wasn't.
I'm just saying, a lot of these are by right.
Right, that's why I just said I'm not going to repeat what Mr. Proto read.
He didn't say by right.
Okay, so here's the deal.
Just letting you know it's by right, so it's not, you're going down a rabbit hole from my point of view.
Councilman Buckholz, I have the utmost respect for you, but I respectfully disagree with you. And I think the difference is this. There is no specified right to STRs under permitted zoning, permitted occupancy. On the flip side, your other alternative is special use permits, and there are a variety of those. None of them mention STRs. What they do mention is, I think it's called tourist homes, and I may get the lingo slightly wrong on that. But what that says is something that's rented out for guests on a short-term basis where the owner is on site all the time. In other words, it's a B&B, yes. And so tourist houses are not STRs. And because there's nothing in the ordinance or in the zoning laws of this town right now that permit STRs, I believe, it's my interpretation, that you have the power to stop them if you choose to do that. And again, I'm not saying take away anybody's that exists right now. What I am saying is please put a pause on this. And if you disagree with me about what the ordinance says or allows and about your rights as a council to legislate a pause, I would say, don't take my word for it. Speak to your own council for the town. But I think that's an important thing. And again, just in closing, I want to thank everybody here. I'm not going to go rambling on about my own, list of my 5 top points I would like to see. I think this should be an inclusive conversation, but I think we cannot wait. We cannot wait. We've been having conversations for a good while. If we pause it for now, while we have the opportunity as a town and as a council and as management to come up with something that we can have some consensus on that works, please do that, and let's do that sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Katie, all the way up front, and then we'll go to Gloria.
I had this woman from the very beginning. Thank you.
And then up front to Gloria.
Hello, my name is Christine. I own 218 Randolph, and I also own Calyx Creamery. So 25 years ago, my husband received a call about doing an electrical job in Cape Charles. We never heard of Cape Charles, but upon arriving to the town, with only 4, maybe 5 stores open, Kelly's, I think, being the only restaurant, to my recollection, we fell in love. We would drive from Virginia Beach, fish on the fishing pier with the kids, spend the day on the beach. As we drove around, it would break my heart to see so many homes abandoned and boarded up. We purchased a home in 2014. We decided to do the short-term rental so other folks could come and enjoy the town. At this time, I believe there were about 45 short-term rentals. As stores began to open up, more people started coming and, more people started coming and renting their homes to the short-term rental. Revenue from the short-term rental was going to the town. With the increase of the short-term rental came increase of visitors. More stores began to open up, people started purchasing those abandoned homes and fixing them up. Bring us to today. 25 years later, this town is one of the most desirable beach vacation spots. This was made possible because of the short-term rentals. I'm the owner of Calyx Creamery. We employ, as of right now, 8 employees. We belong to the National Ice Cream Association. This association offers a scholarship called the Bryce Thompson Scholarship, which is awarded to employees. We would not be able to do any of this if it were not for the business that is drawn in from the short-term rentals. We have to look at all the stores and restaurants that are open now in town and are thriving. And what comes with that? Employment. Employment not only from the businesses, but from housekeeping, landscapers, all the trades. We all know that employment outside of this town is very sparse. I know parking in the summer can be a bit of a hassle. Why the short-term rentals are being blamed for this solely is beyond me. We have Cherrystone, we have Kick the Peak, all those people coming in, it's like day trippers from Virginia Beach. But it seems like we're short-term rentals are being number one blamed for this. But anyway, the crowding on the beach, I get all that. But again, it's only 12 weeks of the year that we ask. For the most part, after that 12 weeks, things slow down. I would also like to address the concerns and the lack of long-term. I would also like to address the concerns of the lack of long-term rentals. Yes, I do understand that there are not many homes for for people to do long-term rentals. I said yes. I do understand that there are not many. But one of my employees just recently needed an apartment. We put it out on Facebook, and within 1 hour, we had 7 people get back to us. And yes, they were not in the town of Cape Charles, but right outside in Cheriton, 10 minutes down the road. And we hear how folks grew up in town and can no longer afford to live in this town. Well, that is everywhere. I purchased my home in Virginia Beach for $150,000. My children grew up in this home. They would love to live in my neighborhood. The price now is over $600,000. And it's everywhere. It's just what happens. It saddens me to see that these restrictions on the short-term rentals are even being discussed. This is such an affordable vacation for families. The short-term rentals are very reasonably priced compared to other beachfront properties. And because of that, families can afford to spend money at the local businesses, the restaurants, and the tax revenue goes back to the town to keep it what has become. A town with concerts in the park, golf cart parades, love runs, events, and a beautiful theater, and so on. And Festive Fridays, a town once forgotten, a town that families and residents cannot wait to get to. You know, we had fell in love with this town 25 years ago, but today I am so much more in love with this town and what it has become because of the short-term rentals. So I ask you, please consider the positive impact that short-term rentals has on our entire community. Thank you.
It's been said.
Okay.
I'll just say I agree with you. Just say I agree with you.
Hi, Maria Raphael, 3 Colony. I just have a question. Well, I'll back up and say, somebody asked the question about why people were selling their houses, why so many are selling, and those becoming STRs. Somebody else mentioned about the tax increases and the assessments on the houses. I think those two go hand in hand. And so that leads me to the question of, has the committee looked at any incentives, tax incentives, for people who live here permanently? And if not, my recommendation is that you should. Because those of us who keep the town running when it's off-season, and it's pretty dead around here during off-season, keeps the restaurants going, keeps the economy going, we're the ones that are doing it. And it's not the tourists, it's not the one-day trippers, it's us. So I suggest that you do a tax incentive for those of us that are here permanently, because we are the ones that are keeping the town running.
Can I address that one? Actually, that was an issue I raised the very first budget season I was on council, because when I lived in DC, we got... Sorry. Now can you? No. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I actually raised that issue the first year I was on council at budget time, because when I lived in DC full-time, we got probably about a third off of our property taxes. And unfortunately, what I learned in that discussion was, because the laws are very different in Virginia, it being a Dillon Rule state, where we're not allowed to do anything. We don't have authority that's not expressly provided to us by the state legislature, that we are not permitted to do that differentiation by the state. John can explain it much better than I can, but
No, you cover, that's exactly right, but I. No, the town sets its own tax rate. The county sets its own tax rate. And as Andrew correctly stated, we don't have the authority to have dissimilar tax rates across property owners. However, that said, your main comment, though, is being considered by the committee, and that is incentives and disincentives. Whether that's a tax or not, but that was something that came out of the joint work session with the council and the commission back in November, was are there other things we can do that can either incentivize or disincentivize certain behavior. So so we are starting to brainstorm some of those ideas.
We did it last year, about the incentive we gave on personal property. We cut it in half for the town portion.
Right, but that wasn't based on STRs or anything. That was
Yeah, I know, but it was for
right.
permanent residents. You have to be a permanent resident.
Yeah, I know the word's coming up.
If you have an STR here, you don't live here full time, you don't get it. So, people that live in the county. Yeah. Get that.
Can everybody hear me? I'm going to have trouble, like, reading, but then also looking up because of these things. So I'm going to read what I have written, because as I thought about this at home and over the course of, months, but more so in the last several weeks since the topic has heated up, I want to say what I wrote, but then I also want to qualify some of my statements based on what I'm hearing from this crowd tonight. And I think that if we all could, that are listening or holding the mic, do the same thing and try to look at this from our neighbor's perspective, then I think that we could probably find some places where we could make some pretty immediate and effective change. So I've got to put these on one moment. My name is Lori Klingel. I live at 622 Monroe in Cape Charles. My husband and I settled in Cape Charles 25 years ago, and we've been full-time residents ever since then. In 2014, I opened Chuckletown Productions with a partner. 2 weeks ago, my husband and I opened an old-fashioned toy store in the downtown. My business pays a fair amount of B-Poll taxes and has for a decade. I employ well over a dozen full and part-time local workers. My business, it monetarily supports Northampton County Public Schools, Shore Soccer, Shore Little League, Central Park, countless numbers. Did I press something? Checka. I burned the mic. I won't drop this. Northampton County Public Schools, Shore Soccer, Shore Little League, Central Park, and countless proms, sports teams, oyster roasts, events, parades, youth activities, and so many other community initiatives, and they're too many to count. And the community initiatives and the youth in our community, they need our businesses because there's not a lot of resources for them. So your business community, the one in Cape Charles, we put our money where our mouth is in a lot of different ways, so I just want to put that out there. 58% of my gross revenues for the year come in 25% of the calendar year, essentially Memorial Day to Labor Day. In fact, a recent survey of over 30 businesses in Cape Charles report that 52% of their gross revenues are acquired between Memorial Day and Labor Day. You know, I'm not a statistician, I'm a gardener. I know a little bit about t-shirt and toys. But that means that the summer visitors are supporting our businesses. I know we love you, our neighbors are full-time residents. We are also full-time residents. And we love to have you in our stores and our restaurants. But I can tell you that you're not paying our mortgages, and that's okay. I think that's okay. I think we could try to maybe find common ground, but acknowledge the fact that the summer winter in Cape Charles drives the economics of our downtown. Cape Charles has 37 traditional lodging rooms available in hotels and B&Bs. That can accommodate 80 or 90 people on any given day. If summer rentals are significantly curtailed, you will see many of our businesses lay off our workers, waiver, or potentially fail altogether. I don't support STR caps or limits. I support reasonable permitting, licensing, occupancy formulas or limits. I support whatever my community brings to the table in terms of solving the problems with golf carts and parking and trash, and not knowing how to get a hold of the person next door because you don't know who owns it. I support all of those things. I have a home with probably one of the biggest short-term rentals directly behind it. Maybe I'm lucky because I just hear toddlers, giggling early in the morning. And I've never had the types of issues I've heard you all talking about, but I hear you. They must be happening. They're just not happening in my direct experience. And for as many of you who are having these very difficult problems, I just assert that there are as many of us not having those problems. And we're trying to find this fine balance. And we're trying to run businesses and we're trying to employ our neighbors and to blanket curtail the STR business in this town would greatly affect us. It would greatly affect the economic vitality of this town. And I hope that you'll think about that. Let me finish. Embracing tourism was a decision made by citizens of the town and county over the course of many decades. Tourism was and is the alternative to chicken houses, to prisons, and to industrial development that would otherwise pollute the groundwater and pollute our bay. Before tourism, those threats were real. They weren't out there swirling around in, Internetville. They were real. They were at our door. And this community, Cape Charles and Northampton County, said, no, we will invite tourism here so that the visitor will come, they will spend their money, and then they'll leave. So the life that many of you are stepping into at whatever point in time you fell in love with Cape Charles, understand that there's a lot of people here, that have been around a long time trying to see this happen. It didn't happen overnight. We still have mortgages to pay. We still have kids that have to get put through school. We still have our own taxes to pay. And we'd like to retire in Cape Charles too. We really would. And we'd like to do it alongside our neighbors. I would like to be a part of the solution to this problem. I agree 100% with John Dempster that we need to break this thing down a little bit, because I don't see how the town manager and this wonderful committee can even come up with the type of data we need to make a decision that affects this many people. That's all. Thank you.
Send it around.
Okay, thank you. I also have a prepared statement, but I also want to echo what Laurie just said, and that is that I think a lot of us are, on both sides of the fence here, are hearing what everyone has to say. And our experiences here in Cape Charles are very different and very varied and have different issues. So I think we're all hearing what everyone says. I want to thank the mayor and the town council for this opportunity, though, to address you and speak on this topic. My name is Nancy Proto, and I reside at 607 Pine Street. I was raised in a small town in Delaware, and when my husband and I started to think about where we wanted to live following retirement, I knew that I did not want to continue to live in New York. I wanted to return to small town living, a place where I knew my neighbors, saw them in and about town, at the grocery store, and at church, a place where my grandchildren would love to visit and have a place to explore and have a sense of freedom. I was looking for a kinder, gentler way of living, a return to the values that I grew up with. Cape Charles seemed to fit all of those criteria. So in 2000, we bought the property where we now live. When we moved here in 2011, I was surprised to discover that some of the houses did not have full-time residents. I assumed it was a town and people lived in the town. But some were second homes, some were short-term rentals, many, of course, as we know, were vacant. Since then, however, the number of STRs have skyrocketed. Over time, friends who were renting long-term have left their homes and sold them because they either couldn't afford them or they had them just literally sold out from underneath them and they needed to move. Others have moved to developments outside of Cape Charles, Tower Hill, Kings Creek, some in Sheraton. There's still more chatter about others considering leaving because of the number of short-term rentals and their neighbors leaving. Our sense of community, in my opinion, seems to be eroding. Many of us here agree with the town documents, specifically the Article 3, Section 2, which has already been discussed, relative to single-family residential district, that states the intent of this basic zoning district is to provide a quiet, medium-density, single-family resident development. Regulations are designed to stabilize and protect the essential characteristics of the district. We agree with the community strategic plan that states its number 1 and number 2 values, that are friendliness and a sense of community. We agree with this community strategic plan's top goal that states to retain the small-town character of Cape Charles. We agree with the vision statement that states preserve our historic and natural and cultural resources while fostering a sense of community that enhances well-being and the prosperity now and for generations to come. We agree with the town's ad hoc committee recommendation, STR recommendation, to protect and preserve the town's sense of community. There are many of us here who agree with all of these statements and many of the other statements that have been expressed relative to the concern of STRs. I do not see how the town's current position of not controlling STRs is consistent with their ordinances, their community strategic plan, the vision statement, its values, and the recommendations of some of the recommendations of the committee. I thank you all for the work that you do. Again, I thank you for this opportunity. I do appreciate the complexity of the issue. I do not envy you have resolving this, but I do urge the town council to pause issuing additional business licenses to SDR owners until the matter can be fully addressed. Thank you.
Is it me? Yay. Sorry. Sorry. My name is Donna Olney Kohler, and I live at 711 Tazewell Avenue, which is operating as the Fig Street Inn. We purchased our home in February 2010, and my husband, 2 children, and I have been full-time Cape Charles residents since August of 2010. We're open year-round. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time seasonal employees. And I just want to reiterate what Lori said as well. We are also able to contribute and support our local organizations, our public school, our private schools, the fire department, and that's all because we are a business and we feel it's very important to give back to the community. When we moved here, Mason Avenue was filled with vacant buildings. Kelly's Ginger Nut Pub was the only restaurant open 7 days a week and the only place for Sunday or Monday dinner. Shops closed at 5 p.m. and most were closed Mondays and Tuesdays. There was nowhere to go. Many of the buildings and most businesses you see today did not exist in 2010. Back then, the Business Association would decorate empty storefront windows so our town didn't look so desolate. The Business Association created the Fall Festival, Festive Fridays, designed a love sign to give people, locals and tourists, reasons to visit our area. What we now know as Cape Charles Main Street evolved out of all of those endeavors. Art Center started a Harbor for the Arts Festival, which is now our summer concert series. Much of what we have today would not be if it had not been for the town councils, the residents and business owners who committed themselves to growing our community through tourism. With our growth in tourism, we have seen growth in short-term rentals. This is not unique to Cape Charles. Short-term rentals would not be here if there wasn't a demand for it, and many of our businesses would not be as successful if Cape Charles did not have short-term rentals. What we need to do is find balance and have responsible and reasonable management for short-term rentals. I do not support a cap. I do not support limiting the number of days a short-term rental can operate in a year. Other communities have tried it. It is very difficult to enforce. Short-term rentals are businesses and should be managed as such. My inn has to provide 1 off-street parking spot for each guest room. An STR should have a similar requirement. Maybe it's based on occupancy. Fire code requires that my guest rooms have so much square footage per person regardless of age. STRs should follow fire code, and I do not believe fire code allows people under a certain age to not count towards occupancy. How would we even begin to manage age requirements on guests in an STR? A person is a person, whether they stay in a hotel, an inn, or a short-term rental. My inn goes through an annual inspection for health and safety, and short-term rentals should have to do the same. It is not in our community's best interest to have inspections only at time of application, ownership transfer, or after a complaint. We should be concerned about the safety of our visitors, so why would we not want that verified each year with a property inspection? I was going to suggest a moratorium. I'm not anymore. I understand what John is saying about, there are regulations we have to follow. Kind of like, let's just leave it as is. Let's get back to the drawing table, come up with some reasonable regulations, take them line item by line item, like John said. I know there was suggestion for doing owner occupied. I would never suggest that an STR should be owner occupied. That is a bed and breakfast, that is a guest house, that is something very few of us commit to each and every day. I would never expect an STR to do that. New York City is doing that, no more than 2 people in a rental, and it must be owner occupied. Weeds out a lot. Someone had made a comment about the market's going to work itself out with interest rates what they are, with properties transferring over, with families choosing to retire here, with other families choosing to come here and operate a short-term rental. The market will work itself out. Our community is very different. It's changed drastically year by year. It is not what it was in 2010. I would never want to see that again. But it was what it was, and we are here today because of a lot of people in this room who invested, committed, paid their dues, and made this community. And as Lori said, we are seeing the fruits of our endeavors. The town is committed to tourism, and as a business owner, I support that endeavor.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond to that? Just clarify something said. With regards to owner-occupied, yeah, I've gone through a lot of ordinances that have that restriction on owner-occupied, but realize to be an owner, you only have to be in it 183 days a year. So I can take the summer off and go somewhere and rent my house, and it's still owner-occupied. So you got to look at the specific wording that's associated with each of these ordinance rules to really know what is going. But there's, it sounds great, owner-occupied, but they're not there. All right.
Who's next?
Hi, good evening. Mark Guevara, 212 Bay Avenue, resident and short-term rental owner. I am of the group, the population supporting short-term rentals. Points well made by both sides, but I'm not going to reiterate any of those. I would like to share one perspective regarding real estate taxes. I think if you have high property values, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have high taxes. Case in point, my father retired in the state of Florida. I often wondered why he did that as a military retiree. But then I was stationed there for 5 years, and I learned the state of Florida, which has high property values, has very low real estate taxes. But they meet the requirements both at the state and county level by a sales and use tax. And what's interesting about the sales and use tax is the people that visit Florida, they're not homeowners down there, but if they visit and they buy anything, they pay something to the state and they pay something to the county. On the order of every dollar spent, 13 cents goes to the state in sales and use tax, and then dependent upon the county, 6 to 8 cents goes to the particular county. So a visitor to Florida spending $1 pays $1.20 for that product. What I think Cape Charles and Northampton County haven't really considered moving from agricultural into this tourism phase is a lot of the increased financial needs of the county and the town, emergency services for the visitors, increased roadway use. We're putting all that on the homeowners, whether we're short-term rental owners or long-time residents on fixed income that don't have the short-term rental income. And I think there's opportunity, Mr. Hosey, in your review, if you would take a look at sales and use tax as a way, it's not even discriminating against, a resident versus somebody out of state visiting Cape Charles. If we all pay sales and use tax, we could keep the real estate taxes low. And then in Texas, they even have a sales and use tax holiday from, for example, Labor Day to Memorial Day. So in the off season, when it's just long-term residents around, they don't pay the increase sales and use tax.
The only,
Just a thought.
yeah, the only problem with that, Mark, is we're doing state rule, and the problem is that's regulated at the state level. We can't do it.
You can't do sales and use tax. Okay, fair enough. Thank you for your time.
So,
I think the button needs to be hit on that one, right up here.
unfortunately.
And then, you have your,
Katie.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Kathy Weiner. I live in Cape Charles. I'm a voting member of Cape Charles. I also have a vacation rental business. I've had it since 2010, so it's going on 15 years. My husband and I moved here in 2006, so we've been here almost 20 years. We bought in 2002, and when I tell you when I moved here, there was nothing extraordinary about the town. You can imagine in 2002 what wasn't here, which is most of what most of you see today. But it was the beautiful beach, and more importantly, it was just the warmth and hospitality of the people who lived here. And we couldn't get over that. We're from New York as well, and so we thought we were in a dream. You know, people were just so lovely here. So we took a leap of faith and we bought here. And once we bought here, we jumped in right away. We joined the Citizens for Central Park, because if you had seen the park when we came, you wouldn't want to be there. And we worked very hard to raise money to make that park what it is today. I also was on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and we used to do progressive dinner tours here. That was the biggest fundraiser for the Northampton County Chamber of Commerce, and that money went back into the community. My husband also volunteered up at the high school and took on the robotics team for 8 years. And although I live in Bay Creek and don't live in town, we spend more of our time in town than we do where we live. And as far as not feeling that neighborhood feel, I feel like the whole community is my neighbor. And we love it when we have company, and I'll walk down the street and they'll look at me and they're like, do you know everybody here? Well, that's what I wanted. That's what we wanted, because we never had that. I'm nervous too, so. Let's see. So again, I never lost that feeling of being everybody's neighbor. And I just look at this as one community. And I also have a business in town. And I'm also a broker with Coldwell Banker because I was bored and I didn't have enough to do. But I just wonder if the people who have moved here within the last 10 years, would they have even considered moving here 20 years ago? Because the people who were here 20 years ago are the ones that made it what it is today and made it so attractive that people wanted to move here. That's it.
So Katie, right over here, and then we'll come up to Diane.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Smith, 701 Prestwick Turn. When I woke up this morning, I actually thought of Christmas. I thought of the very first festive Friday that I went to this past December. I've been to them in the years past, but this first one struck me in particular. I got out of the car, and I shut the door, and I looked at the town, and I thought, wow, this is my community. I feel like I walked into a Hallmark film. I just saw people thriving, prosperous, excited. We have come a long way over the last
12, 15 years. I remember not so long ago, this town had little economy, boarded up buildings, no retail, no ice cream shops, and only one place to eat. There's an economic term called opportunity costs, and by definition, it simply means that the potential benefits that an individual or a business misses out on when they choose something else. It is framed how I think moving forward, or how I thought moving forward about decisions that I had to make. What will be the costs of my choices? I would like to thank our local business owners who have generously donated the profits to this town so that we can all enjoy Festive Fridays, concerts in the park, Palace Theater shows, concerts, countless donations to local sports teams, scouts, and I could go on and on. So thank you for that. This town finally has a thriving economy. And people are able to make a life here in a small town, and we do life together. And we all have tourism to thank for that. The opportunity cost of limiting short-term rentals is a cost that this community would soon regret. I'm happy to wait in line a little longer in the summer for my pizza or for my ice cream, and I will joyfully give directions to those visitors who have chose to spend their hard-earned money to come to this town, because it means that I get the opportunity to do life in such a wonderful, wonderful place with all of you. I too owned a short-term rental for many years. And in the 14 years that I owned it, well, owned it 14 years now, but in the 11 years that it was in the rental program, I had to speak to one person. Then they were just a little loud, and I had to get up really early in the morning. And I politely said, hey guys, I got to get up at like dark 30. Could you just pipe it down a little bit? And they said, yes, ma'am, we are so sorry. And I never heard another peep. So I don't know what all the problems are everybody else is hearing, but I never experienced it. So
Now,
thank you.
Can you tell them where your Prestwick Turn, that's the most densely populated short-term rentals. There are 42 there.
In condos, yes, I'm in the condos.
I had the same experience one time in 7 years.
One time. And I find that people, when they visit and they open the door, I ask them where they're from. How'd you find out about Cape Charles? Would you like to know where to go? Would you like to know what's going on this weekend? Because there's plenty to do here. And I do get asked those questions, and I'm very happy to share those experiences because they chose to come here. And so we hope that they'll invest in our town, and like you said earlier, spend their money and leave. So we can continue to have a prosperous and wonderful community. We don't have to walk on broken glass on downtown Mason like we did a long time ago, because that reality is very real. So, thank you.
Up front.
She's been waiting as well the whole time. I'll stay.
Hi, my name is Debbie Suddeth, and I have a vacation rental property in Cape Charles as well. But I thought I would just share my personal journey as to how I became a crazy vacation rental property owner. It was not in the plan. We had taken a trip up to Jersey and came back down this way, and I love to stop into little historical towns along the way. This was in '96. And so, you know, I said to Steve, my other half, hey, let's drive into Cape Charles. I said, I'd like to see the main street. That's where I always head. Well, we got about halfway down Randolph, and it was just like I had taken a turn. I was in the wrong side of town. And so I looked at Steve. I said, I don't want to see Main Street. Can we get the hell out of here? I don't want to be here, you know. So we hightailed it around and didn't even go down to the end and around, and went back home. At that time, we were living in Chesapeake, and then we came back over. We had forgotten about Cape Charles. We came back in 2007, and I saw a little progress. I was like, you know, this is kind of a cool place, and I can see a vision here. Things are happening here. And I didn't tell Steve, but I had picked up a little newspaper. There was a house for sale in town, used to be an old funeral home, and I said, I'm going to buy this house, Steve. And he goes, you're crazy. What are you going to do with it? And I said, I don't know, let's just go look at it. He said, I'll take you around to look at it, but I can guarantee you when you see it, you're going to see all you want to see. And I said, okay, that's fine, let's go inside. We went inside. It was a condemned property. There were several holes in the floor, sheetrock fallen in. It had been leaking for years. But now it's the beautiful, the prettiest house on the block, 641 Randolph Avenue. But yeah, we turned it around and it's pretty, but then he said, well, what in the world are you going to do with it? Nobody wants to come here because the house to the left is condemned. The house to the right is condemned. There's nothing to do here. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm going to put it on VRBO and see what happens because I needed to make a little money. So, we put it on there. And it turned into a business. And I said, okay, this will work. We can keep this house. There is a market here for this, tourism, believe it or not, here in Cape Charles. But then I did get to thinking about why did this little town become so run down to begin with? I was doing some research, and back in the day it had 11 hotels and several saloons and grocery stores and drug stores, clothing stores. And then I realized when I was reading the history of Cape Charles that when the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel had opened, the town, there was no longer any need for anyone to come into Cape Charles to get the ferry that used to go from Cape Charles to Norfolk. So that's why everyone had been coming into Cape Charles. And so really the moral of the story to me is the town is back. We got those saloons back. We got those hotels back. And, history repeats itself, and so I just hate to see the thing that brought it back get squashed, in the process of, disagreements about parking or, whatever. And I do agree with so many people, these things can be worked out. And I might say I have my neighbors here, Mark and Ann and Rita and Craig, and out of all these years, no complaints from my rental property, none. So, but anyways, that's my speech. Thank you very much.
The button, push the button. No.
Well, it's lit.
It's on now. It's on.
Oh, it is. I'd like to sing a little tune. My name is Diane D'Amico. I live at 602 Jefferson. I had prepared remarks. Then I made a lot of notes, jettisoned the prepared remarks, and now I'm jettisoning the notes. I want to tell you that I do not hate short-term rentals. I don't know anyone who hates them. I don't. I don't hate tourists, and I don't hate short-term rental owners. What I don't like is that there's too many of it, and that my town has not, as far as I'm concerned, changed for the better. So let's get together, because if I don't hate you, I'm hoping you don't hate me. Let's get together and let's talk this out. And let's make it work for all of us, not piecemeal. Because once one little thing goes into, becomes a regulation, then everybody will drop the rest of them. No, we want to go through the whole thing. We want a short moratorium. We have money now, right? We sold the water and sewer plant, so we can get some consultants who know what they're doing and can make this happen quickly.
Let's find a balance so we can all kiss and make up. And in the meantime, we can be happy with our tourists, which we were in the past, and we can be happy with the number of short-term rentals and the number of neighbors that we have. Thank you.
Diane, you hand it right back here. 3 rows back. Thank you.
Who am I handing it to?
My name is Roxanne Ward. I'm a business owner in Cape Charles. I am not a resident. If I was, I'd want to be Ms. Jones's neighbor. I was born and raised in Cape Charles, and I have seen the worst and I've seen the best. One thing I just want to remind everybody of is what it was before short-term rentals came in. I've always dreamed of having a business. I used to work with Nina Jones. It used to be Jones's Department Store, and she's the one that caused me to be bit by the bug to have a dress shop in Cape Charles, and it never happened. My dream left when I would ride down the street and see boarded up windows and busted out windows. And even in the residential areas, there were empty houses that were condemned. Newspapers blowing down the street. And I do remember when you could not come into Cape, you weren't allowed to come into Cape Charles because nothing good, as my mom used to say, happened after dark in Cape Charles. But I will tell you, nobody in this room loves this town any more than I do, and nobody in this room appreciates the tourism any more than I do, because Cape Charles has come back to life, and I still feel like it's my home. So when I've heard a lot about regulations and caps and limits, but what I haven't heard a lot about is management. It's managing what we have. And I think we can all come together for the betterment of our town through management. And I just ask that when these decisions are being made, that you think about the amenities that you have that brought you here and how those amenities came to be, because they were not here prior to tourism. Thank you.
No.
Are we working?
There you go.
It's red, it's not green.
We have another one.
All right. Don't worry about it.
Katie's ready to.
I'm Susan Kerrigan. I live at 530 Tazewell Avenue.
It's on, just hold it, just hold it, just hold it.
Just hold it. All right. And I did have a lot to say earlier, but most of it's been said. I just wanted to make stress what I think one of the important things is the management. And I know we suggested that the town should get someone to keep control of the short-term rentals. One reason is, Lori, you said behind you, all you ever heard were little children laughing. The house behind me on Randolph is the party house, which is what I found out after I bought it's a duplex. I've had people playing, what's that game? Cornhole outside at 11 o'clock at night, and have you ever listened to cornhole? It goes boom, boom, boom. Anyway, I've had wedding parties. I even went over to one of the wedding parties in my pajamas at 11 o'clock one night and asked them to please calm down, and they asked me if I wanted a drink. You people that think we hate short-term rentals, we don't. And I've lived here for 6 years and I love the town. I just think we need to control the short-term. Someone's got to be like, I didn't know who to call that night. I didn't think I should call the police and say, hey, they're playing cornhole at 11 o'clock. I mean, so that's part of the problem. We just need to end the garbage, but the garbage better. So that's all. Let's get someone to control it.
So I would have known who to call on a particular night, rather than going over in my pajamas. Thank you.
Anybody else? Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I hadn't planned to speak. My name is Kathy Glasser. I own a short-term rental, and I live in another house. My short-term rental used to be a bed and breakfast, so I get both sides of that. I hear everyone saying how the excessive number of people in the summer seems to be a problem. I've had a home here over 20 years, and in that whole time, the single goal of all the chambers, the Bed and Breakfast Association, the town council was to increase tourism. And that's all we worked for. Well, now we did it. And now we're complaining. What have we done to bring in families? Everyone says, oh, you know, I miss having families living next door. How are we attracting these people? If we limit the short-term rentals and people don't buy them, who's going to live in those houses? Not the families. You're not going to get families here because we can't support them. I think that's what we need. If we want to change the demographics of this town, I think we need to start looking into how to bring families in. That's all I want.
Right up here.
There are groups working on that. They have been working with education. Roberta and Chuck have been working over 20, 30 years now? 31 years. They've got head start, and they've just gone grow and I always get messed up. Grow and
Go
grow.
and grow Eastern
Yeah.
Shore.
So,
Building bridges to bright futures.
correct. And they've been working on it for
Where
years.
are families?
It takes a long time for this to cycle over. And the problem is, when I first moved here in 2004, we had 3 Blue Star schools, the highest rated schools in the state. My kids grew up here, 3 and 6. They went through the whole educational, well, most of it, through the Eastern Shore. Mostly at Broadwater, and then they went to boarding school after that. But they grew up here. So that's been the number one thing that's been working on. We've been working on it for years. Part of the tourism stuff that we've worked on for the last 20 years, trying to get people to move here. Tourism was part of it. But we've also been trying to work on getting families here. But the cycle of bringing those schools back up to that takes a long time.
I'm just saying that all we've done is work to bring tourism in, and now
I'm saying it's not true.
now they're here, and
There's a lot of stuff going on in the background you're just not aware of, that a lot of people have been working on, a lot. My business donates probably about $10,000–$15,000 a year. A lot of it goes to the kids' closet. A lot of it goes to a bunch of other stuff. I give back to the
and I
community.
hear that from everyone. I'm just saying, be careful what you ask for.
I get that, but I'm saying there's stuff going on in the background. A lot of people just don't realize what's going on. And I'm just trying to share that information so you all know education is a big priority here. Because once the education gets solved, you will start having families come here. There are families coming here, not as many as you think, but they are coming.
There also is another market that doesn't require the family piece. It is dinks, they used to call them, dual income, no kids. And people who can work from home in the teleworking market. That's a market that is untapped, that Main Street's tried to tap into with some of the efforts there. So it's not, we've focused on tourism to get to this point, but it's not to be said that those conversations haven't happened. I say that just because the education component does take so long. And there is another market that we can kind of work toward. It's not necessarily young families and doing that. So there are possibilities in building that.
Well, to me, a building block on that is affordability of houses.
Yes.
And short-term rentals don't make it affordable.
As I said, if people don't do short-term rentals, no one can afford those houses.
My name is Phil Getkin.
Finally.
No, you should stay back by your seat because you're too close to this.
I live at 602 Jefferson Avenue, and I have a limit short-term rental sign in my yard. I was a little hesitant about doing that, but the reason I did it is not because of my wife, but I felt that short-term rentals was becoming a problem in town. We've lived in town for 10 years. We have a short-term rental that's about 5 feet from our house. It's been a short-term rental for 5 years. I've never had a problem with any of those people. They're all wonderful. I mean, they're on vacation, they're having a good time, but we have never had a problem with any of them. But that's not really the issue. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I think it's hard to deny we've had an exponential growth of short-term rentals. And in my way of thinking, it hasn't really done anything for the sense of community. There's still a lot of great people in town, and my point that I really want to stress is balance. I'm personally not against short-term rentals, and what I am concerned about is balance, a proper balance. What is a proper balance? If we don't do something soon, I think that balance is going to become more skewed than it is. There are certainly some blocks in town, ours being one of them, where short-term rentals is outnumbering the full-time residents. I want to be part of a community with not only short-term rentals, but with full-time people that we can enjoy the entire year with, not just 12 weeks during the summer.
Okay. Great, thank you. My name's Karen Zamorsky. I live at 22 Bridgeton Drive. I've actually lived in several places around here in Cape Charles since 2005, when my husband and I first bought here. I'm now the executive director of Cape Charles Main Street, and I have been for 5 years now, and I can tell you a lot's happened even in the last 5 years. We have worked tirelessly to, of course, bring tourism, but we've also tried to balance it as we don't advertise Cape Charles in the summer. It takes care of itself. What we concentrate on are bringing things to the community that everybody can enjoy the rest of the year. And I can tell you for a fact it's working because our shoulder season is changing. It is shortening by a lot. I can give you stats on that. I can bring the pictures to show that we currently have moved from a June, July, August blip to from May through October, and then a little bit of a drop, but then Festive Fridays brings it back up again. So it is starting to stretch out in a great way, the way that we all hoped it would. But right now what's happening in here is scaring the bejesus out of me. It really is. I'm going to tell you that I just put my house in the rental market too. And not because I wanted to, we've not done that before. But because of what's happening, I'm afraid it's going to affect the value of my home. I'm afraid that it's going to change, that this is going to get carried way beyond where it should be. It comes back to management. I hope there certainly are regulations that should be put in place to manage it. And I don't think anybody in here disagrees with that. But limits, it died. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. I mean, I don't want to see limits because you're changing people's lives. What if I wanted to right now? I'm not leaving because I still have a full-time job here. I'm staying, I'm renting somewhere else. But I'm getting my house in the market because I'm trying to protect what my husband and I have built here. And I've been here since 2005. So, I think there's a lot of other people out there like me. Not with that money, there's a bunch of people that put their homes in the market that didn't want to rent and still don't want to rent, but they're doing it because they feel they have no choice. So, just saying that, and let's be careful what we wish for. That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Hi, my name's MJ Gollibart, and I am married to Suzanne Gollibart. I just wanted to say that, thank you. No, she couldn't be here tonight. But anyway, She probably heard that, though. Hi, Suzanne. I want to talk about how fragile what we have is in terms of there are no guarantees that the tourists that came here last year are going to come here next year. And there's no guarantees that anybody's going to come here again. But people come here for all the reasons that everybody's already talked about. And it's a great place to live. It's a great place to visit. It's a great place to raise a family. It's got all those wonderful things about it. But what makes the community viable is tourism. And that is fragile. And I would encourage the council to do everything in their power to encourage tourism and do everything in their power to discourage discouraging tourism. I think, you know, you have to, there's a certain amount of tolerance that you have to have if you live in a town where, you know, half of the business is, survive via tourism during the season. Suzanne and I live across the street from what used to be the tennis courts and now are the pickleball courts. And any, you know, between the hours of 6 in the morning and, you know, late at night because there are lights over there, the street is, you know, completely taken up with pickleballers and what aren't pickleballers are, you know, people that park there to take their kids to the park. And when we bought the land that we built our house on, you know, it was a tennis court and there wasn't anybody there, but there was the possibility that a lot of people could start to use that thing, and there was a possibility that people would start playing this adult ping pong thing called pickleball. And, you know, I've learned to really embrace it. I love it. I love living across the street from the park. I love living across the street from the tennis courts. And I'm sure that there are other people that if they lived there, they would probably go insane. And they would put a sign in their front yard that says, you know, limit the hours of pickleball. But I don't think that's the right thing to do, because I don't think we should. And I know that a lot of people come here to use the pickleball courts because they're awesome. The park's also awesome. And I don't think we should impose, you know, strict limits on short-term rentals any more than we should, you know, have strict limits on how much pickleball can be played. And I think that in order for us to, you know, kind of get along as a community, we have to kind of recognize that we all live in this kind of tourist town. And there's going to be tourist stuff that takes place during a large part of the year, at least some part of the year. And you just kind of have to grin and bear it. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not, but that's life. You know, kind of like the song, you know, I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden. I mean, no one has, you know, the right to, you know, serenity, peace, and quiet like it was in 2010. You know, things change, things evolve. And I think, just like Clayton pointed out, things also change, like in a block. Like inside of 5 years, you know, he went from a majority of short-term rentals to now it's a minority. It changes, it ebbs and flows as the market dictates and as people's tastes dictate. But I do believe that what we have is extremely fragile. Everyone who's worked so hard to make us what we are now, and to have Southern Living come, and to have HGTV come, and to have Coastal Living come, and the state, and all the money and the energy that's been poured into encouraging tourists to come here, I think we should continue to encourage them to come here, unabated. And I'll close with this. I don't think the town is at capacity until it gets to be like it was in the 30s and the 40s. In the 30s and the 40s, there were thousands of people that lived in town and slept in town and drank the water in town and did what you do after you drink water. And there were thousands of others that were coming here and they were buying cars at one of our 3 car dealerships, or going to movies at our 3 movie theaters, or going to the saloon. And I'm sure there were a bunch of people who were like, we got to get rid of these saloons, down with the saloons, you know. And, you know, everybody has their opinion, everyone has a right to their own opinion, and I'd encourage everyone to express it. But I think that we have a long way to go before we get anywhere close to that capacity. And there was a lot of transients back in those days. There were boarding houses back in those days. We don't have those anymore, but we got a lot of room for a lot of people in Cape Charles. And if you can't park in front of your house for a couple of months out of the year, I'm sorry. But you don't own that land. You don't. And back when we weren't popular, and nobody came here, you had to run to the place. You could park 3 boats in front of your house. We can't do that anymore. And sometimes you have to walk a little bit to get to your house, or maybe you have to park in back. And that's kind of like the pickleball court. Sometimes it gets a little loud over there. But, just got to embrace it. So I encourage council to embrace tourism, encourage tourism, incentivize tourism, which means incentivizing short-term rentals, incentivizing hotels and bed and breakfasts, and to encourage tourists to come here and to feel welcome. And I encourage everybody in the community to do likewise. Thank you.
New people.
Hi, my name is Roberta Newman. I moved here 31 years ago. I live full-time since then on 8 Randolph Avenue in Cape Charles. I came here not as a tourist. I came here totally by accident to discover this place. I was sent here by the State Department of Education to do training for after-school programs that were being run by the Recreation Department and were being run by county extension offices. And while I was here, they asked me, did I want to stay in a motel out on the highway or did I want to stay in a B&B? So I was living in Bethesda, Maryland at the time, doing a lot of traveling around the state to do training. And one day I was walking across the street there in Bethesda outside of my high-rise apartment building I was in. And I saw a little old lady fighting the traffic. She was carrying 2 bags of groceries. She was stooped over, and she was walking like this. Some of you are going to see me like that soon, but anyway, that's how she was. And I said, oh my God, I don't want to be here when I'm her age. I want to be somewhere else. So as I was traveling around the state, I looked at a lot of places. I was the Southwest and Northern Virginia and the East, Virginia Beach, and then they sent me over here. I had a video I'd produced on after-school programming, and when I got here, I didn't know anybody, but they asked me if I wanted to stay in the B&B, and I said, yes, I'll stay here. Chris Bannon had his Seagate then, and I just fell in love with having the French toast and sausage breakfast that he served for, I think, as long as he was ever there. And it was just wonderful, and the sea breeze came in the screen porch, and I was like, wow, I think I might need to be here. Then I went to the training, and I met these wonderful people, and I had this sense as they talked about children and families and the work they were already doing right then and there. I thought, this is a place where you could get things done. I was from Fairfax County. I used to run the after-school program, 65 programs after school. And it's a little harder in a big bureaucracy like that to get some things done. But I thought, here I could just tell. People talk to each other. People who had a lot of money talked to people who didn't have any money. It wasn't all about the economics, but there was so much interaction and mix in about 3 days that I said, I'm going to talk to a realtor. Well, Chris Bannon always had a realtor, Brenda Frazier, who came over to see all the people that came in. They were marketing, the area even then. So I met her, and she took me to a house that was the one I live in now, a block away. And I decided, I think I'm really interested in doing this. A lot of things were changing in my life. I was a sink, not a dual income, single income, no kids person. So I decided that I'd try to make this work and come down here and live. There was no job for me. I was doing a lot of consulting around other places, so I figured as long as I could keep going away and coming back and going away and coming back and a few over weekends, that would really work. But it was an interesting time to be here because when I pulled up to Chris's place that night, it was Memorial Day weekend, a holiday weekend, was kind of pouring rain. There wasn't a light on in Cape Charles anywhere other than his. And I said, should I really just go back out on the highway and go to a motel? And then I said, no, you need to, this is what you're going to do. It's an adventure. It'll be a fun kind of thing to do. So I went in there and stayed, did the training, went back home. and talked to Brenda, and I found out I could buy a house for just a little over $100,000 at the time. And I thought, well, this will be great. But I came here, one of the reasons I wanted to say something is to build on what Lori was saying, is that from the moment I set foot on the Eastern Shore, the people that I met, there is, as they say in Virginia Beach, something in the water, I guess, maybe. There is a feeling of community here. There is a feeling of connection. There's a feeling of acceptance that you can build on. And I think that's one of the things that can bring everybody here in this room together and build on that part of community that we all want. When I moved here, there were no houses on my street. I think there were 2 that had people in them. But I've seen the ebb and flow over the years, as my son Clayton was saying earlier. Sometimes there were a lot of people living there. Sometimes it was, I think a few years ago, maybe 8 years ago, there was, if I'm on my front porch, there were 2 rentals, short-term rentals across the street. There was one behind me. There was one to my left, and there was one to my right, which was his. So sometimes, I was thinking, but we never had really any great difficulties, but there were a couple of times when things did happen, and it resonates with me about management and how important that is. There's one night, probably 5 years ago, we had 3 Jack Russells at the time, and they all freak out when fireworks go off. So we nurture them a lot. But it was a few days after the 4th of July. There were people in a short-term rental about a block away from us, and they were shooting off fireworks about 10 o'clock at night, and our little dogs were just shaking, and it just made me want to cry, So I was stomping around and everything. But I knew that there was an ordinance the town had, that you couldn't do that. So I decided to take a deep breath and to walk down the street, and they were out in the front yard, and I said, "Excuse me, can I ask you something?" I said, "Did you know that it's not legal for you to be shooting off fireworks in the town of Cape Charles? There's an ordinance." And I said, "I have to tell you, it really bothers me because my little dogs are just ready to collapse." In fact, one of them one year during 4th of July had a heart attack and did die. So I was upset. But when they said, "We had no idea. We didn't know there was an ordinance, and we're really sorry." And I said, "Well, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't do any more." And they said, "We won't. We're done." And they went in their house. So I'm not saying that we all need to be the police, but I am saying that when I moved here, everybody was a stranger to me. And, one at a time, people become not strangers. And renters are just as capable of being your friend as the people who live here. And in fact, most of the renters that I've ever met are people who came here because they love the same thing everybody in here is saying they love. That's what they want to do. But I've been on vacation myself too, and I know I talk louder then. So I think there are ways that we could sensitize and work with people and manage things as they're going on. And just to play on, since Andy brought up what we're doing, I'm going to make a commercial because I am the coordinator of what used to be called Smart Beginnings Eastern Shore. And I do a lot of work with the schools. And I also wanted to just mention the connection between one of the short-term rentals that stayed in my son's house is a woman named Billie Jean Benson. Are you here by any chance? You know Billie Jean, right? Well, it turns out that she rented there several different years before they moved here, and they live in Bay Creek. Now she's the president of the Northampton County Education Foundation. They made a nice pact with the Shanty this year and had a wonderful event that many of you may have gone to not very long ago that made thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to help teachers at Northampton County schools do more for the kids. And that's a perfect example of somebody who came here for a certain reason, now found things to do in the community, as many of the others were mentioning that their businesses do as well. So that was a happy story with one of the short-term rentals. But I want to just put in the commercial that our organization, Go and Grow Eastern Shore, which focuses on promoting the well-being of children, youth, and families, and their families from 0 to 18. We've done 4 different forums, and we've always come up with projects and initiatives that were action-oriented. After they were over, we had to go into hiatus because of COVID. But we're having our next forum back in person at the Community College, May 30th, 8 to 4:30, and if you really want to meet a ton of people who are really doing things right now for kids all over the Eastern Shore in their organizations and personally, you ought to come. It's free, and you even get a free breakfast and lunch. So with that, my commercial's over, but I hope everybody can really start working on keeping that spirit of community and positive embracement. Thank you.
I think everybody's ready to go home. Walter Bronson, 515 Tazewell. I don't think we've given you all enough chance to talk tonight, and I was going to do that, but I've changed my script like a lot of other people. I agree, and Jay, that I think tourism is fragile. I think that the tourists come here for the same reason that us full-time residents came here. It's a quaint town. It's got a great beach. It's got a vibrant community. And I think that it can get overwhelmed with too many people. I know people that love the beach, and they get up at the crack of dawn during the season and go down and stake out their place on the beach like this is some kind of resort or cruise ship. And I don't think that's the kind of community that I want to live in, and I don't think as that continues to get worse that way, that people are going to continue to come back to. There's definitely people that do that. You know, we moved here to have a walkable town that we could go to. We could go to restaurants, we could go to the saloons, and to the beach and the sunsets and all the other wonderful things that we have. But it's not a walkable town when you can't get into those restaurants and those saloons and other things that we like to do in the summertime. And yeah, maybe you have to wait in line a little longer, but I have to tell you, it's a lot longer, and it's enough to make me go home or go out of town to another restaurant. And I know you say that in the winter, we get the joy. It's only 12 weeks out of the year. Well, it's a lot more than 12 weeks out of the year. As you just said, you know, the shoulder seasons are filling in. You've done a great job of bringing people in. Now, don't call me wrong. I'm like Phil, I have no objection to the short-term rentals. I love most of the owners around me. I think that 80% of the people that come into town, 90% of the people that come into town are great people. But if you're like me and you've got 4 that you can spit on from your front porch, there's a certain percentage every week, every 2 weeks that you have a problem with. And it's probably not a big problem, and I've certainly asked people to quiet down, and they've quieted down. There's been other times they gave me some trouble. And I'm not the guy that wants to call the police, but maybe that's what we have to do. Maybe with a registry and know what to do to call somebody, I could do that. But I really do think there's a saturation point, and we're getting to that saturation point. And I don't know that the growth that we've had in short-term rentals is really sustainable. Now, somebody said tonight the town was turning around when they came here in 2007. In 2017, there were less than 30 short-term rentals. So while I don't think that the short-term rentals are the demon of all demons to the town, I don't know that you all can really claim that is the only reason that Cape Charles has come back from the depths of where it was at one time. Certainly it has contributed to it. We need it. I do not advocate for getting rid of it. But as I've said to this board before, there needs to be a balance that's struck with it. In 2017, there were less than 30. In 2018, there were 50 in the whole zip code. By 21, there were 250. Now there's over 500 in Cape Charles between Bay Creek and the R1 in the historic district.
I just want to, just a point of reference that wouldn't be publicly probably anywhere. Prior to 2017, there wasn't much holding short-term rentals accountable as far as short-term rentals and for transit occupancy tax. The town made a huge effort between 16 and probably 17 forward in going on Airbnb, VRBO, and all those places to look to see who was doing it illegally. And much of that came from the kind of unequal playing ground for the B&Bs and other properties. So those numbers are probably, I'm sure that's what they say they are, but I'm having known and been through that, it would be drastically different. When that first number went up so high, that was because, I can't remember the number, but I remember them finding something like 100 and some that were not registered. So, just wanted to, just a point of.
My numbers may be off.
No, I'm not saying that's, just give me some.
But I can tell you,
If you are using the zip code, that zip code goes from Eastville to the Bridge Top.
that's my point.
That's not Cape Charles.
I know it's not King Charles, but there were only 50 of them in that whole zip code at that time. From what I've heard, my numbers may be off. I'm not going to say. I will say that from the time that we bought 3 years ago, there's been a 400% increase on my end of the block alone. And as was stated earlier, Monroe, every house that's sold except one, Sherman, has gone to be short-term rentals. I don't think you can argue that there's been a tremendous growth in the amount of short-term rentals. And that's my point. And so just hear me out for a minute.
I got a comment about the beach. Go ahead.
Okay. At some point, we'll reach saturation. At some point, we're going to be oversupplied, and people may not come because it's not as quaint a town as it used to be, or short-term rentals just aren't as popular as they used to be, and the demand is not going to be there at the same time our supply is going up. So then what happens? You got to lower your price to get the same amount of occupants. What happens when you lower the price? Like I said, 80–90% of the people that come here are great people. Do we end up with all the bachelor parties? Do we end up with the frat parties? Do we end up with people that right now are going someplace else that it's less expensive than here? And if it gets worse than that, if we really are oversaturated, now people are going to lose their short-term rentals. They can't afford their mortgages. That's my biggest fear, is you're going to start a spiral going the other way.
It happened in 2008, by the way.
It did happen in 2008. So
it comes and goes, and it depends on the marketing, how it's driven. The beach we're talking about, you realize we have two campgrounds, one to the northwest, one to the south.
I do.
2,000 people per campsite. So a lot of that traffic you see on the beach are not from short-term rentals. Those are from people coming from outside of town. A lot of people from Northampton County come to that beach. A lot of people I know go to that beach all the time. So it's not the short-term rentals that are plugging that beach up. There's a lot of people plugging that beach up. It's only a quarter-mile long. It's not a big beach. As a matter of fact, the beach didn't exist when I first moved there. It was only half of it. So it's come a long way. So you got to be careful what you say, because there's a lot of stuff that's intertwining through this entire Eastern Shore that people come to visit different stuff. A lot of Festive Fridays are local people that come to it from all over the Eastern Shore. And that's bringing people that are local during our off-season to bring money into our town. It has nothing to do with short-term rentals. So there's a lot that Main Street's done, just because I've been doing this 20 years trying to get this town out of where it was. It's not only me, but there's about 20 or 30 of us that worked on it for decades.
and you've done a great job. And don't want to take any of that away from anybody. I just want to have a community to live in. I want to have neighbors, as has been said earlier,
I didn't have
to live next to me.
no one to live next to me. No one.
I'm not opposed. I am advocating for the pause that's been asked for tonight. I do think that there should be some kind of density placed on short-term rentals. I disagree that, I think the businesses are doing well in town. I don't think that we need to add 10% more short-term rentals so that we get 2 more t-shirt shops in town, because that'll just never stop. There's got to be a balance, and that's all I'm asking you to find. And I think it'll encourage everybody to work a little harder at it if we put a pause on it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
No. Jeff hasn't spoken
Jeff has
yet.
not
You
spoken.
go first.
Yeah,
it's on Facebook.
So Jeff Klingel, 25-year resident of the town, owner-operator of multiple businesses, and it'll come to probably nobody's surprise that I agree with everything my wife said earlier. I'll also say that I agree with everything Donna said, everything MJ said, and so many other things that other people said. I think that management is key, and I think that understanding and finding those best management techniques is the key to finding the success. And I believe that with those management tactics in place, and I also think that with some of the market correction that you were talking about, I don't think that there's any need whatsoever for any limitations.
Has everybody spoken?
I believe so.
Kathy wants to do a second
I just
round.
want to do a second
Go
one,
right ahead.
please. Okay. So I don't know where you got your statistics from, but if you look on VRBO, there's maybe 300 rentals, and that includes the county. That even includes Eastville, Machapongo. Airbnb is even a greater area that they cover. They cover across the bay. You can type in Cape Charles, and Yorktown will come up, and Hampton will come up, and Newport News will come up. So we have nowhere near 500 rentals. And as far as management is concerned, I agree, that's a big issue. And Chuck is my partner in the vacation rental business, and we live here. We both live here, and we stressed that when we go for, an interview. I don't see how somebody can properly manage their house when they don't live here. Somebody lost their key at 10 o'clock at night, The air conditioning went out. Not to say that we could fix it, but we know, so in the morning, we can call and get somebody over there. And Donna. So I just wanted to clarify that my houses do get inspected every year. That I have to, that I go around with Jeb Brady, and he goes into each one of my homes, and he inspects them. And he either passes them or they don't. No, but Donna was saying that, we should have an inspection, yeah.
I thought the proposal said it was only going to be on, maybe I misread it.
No, you read it correctly. It
No.
said that it was going to propose 2 to 3 years as opposed to the annual inspection.
No, I like annual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like annual also.
Agreed.
And by the way, they charge $150 for each house, so you make money by doing that as well.
The inspection is required to get your business done.
Correct.
All right, so let's
So-
even clarify that one step further. We were talking within our subcommittee that inspections would have to initially be done by the town. We would allow inspections by the owners. Listen to what I'm saying. We are inspection by the owners, and then every so often the town would come back. And that's what the proposal was being discussed.
I don't like that.
You let it go
No.
like it, that's what the
I-
subcommittee was talking.
And if you could pass it all the way to the back after you're done.
Sure.
I think the latest number of
Oh, no, get the
short-term
microphone. Wait
the
for
latest
mic.
number of short-term rentals in the historic, in the Ed Wells 202 Strawberry, the latest number of short-term rentals as of 4/10/2024 from the town's own, I don't know what it is, but it's 213 short-term rentals in the historic district. I mean,
That's throughout town, but the other thing is, that those numbers, there was a big rush for people getting their business license. A lot of people did it and they're not exactly short-term running, they're not renting, they're just.
Yeah, they're getting a business license to,
That number comes from too, just so you know.
well, that's the number that was given
I know.
for the historic district.
Coming to my neighborhood in the state district, you see there's 5, there's only 2 short-term rentals, 2 long-term rentals. The other one got out of short-term rental and is moving here. So the numbers are, I won't say misleading, they're just not accurate.
So you're getting business licenses for what, if they're not short-term rentals?
Because we're worried about a cat, so they were getting ahead of the cat.
And why is the town allowing that?
It's the fun for business.
There's no rules that they can't.
We have no prohibition against it.
Do they provide proof of insurance for a short-term rental or anything like that?
We have no short-term rental regulations at all right now.
And they have to carry it.
Yeah, I think it's time something gets done.
No different than other insurance.
Oh.
Sure. Yeah, we need the microphone, please.
I was gonna-
Sorry, did you want to go ahead real quick? You got the microphone. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just going to say, going off of like the safety and stuff inspections, I mean, I didn't go into like a whole lot of business stuff earlier, but we manage about 200 properties all the way from the bridge, all the way down to the state line, up to the state line. And so we require our homeowners to have a safety inspection. And then before every guest turnover, we have inspections that come after our housekeepers, and they have to check the smoke detectors, they have to check. So there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of regulations that are already in place that are working in a lot of places that don't require a limit and a cap. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Send it all the way over.
So just quickly, the last time when you all had your joint work session with the committee and the planning and zoning and yourselves, I mean, I think Andrew made a great point. That is, before we do anything, you've got to dig into some data. Because all I'm hearing here is anecdotal stories. I mean, you no more want to get rid of the regulations because the number on my street has gone to 1 than you want to put them in place because his have gone up by 400%. At that meeting, I don't think Katie, I'm not pointing the finger at you, but it seemed as though we couldn't even tell yet when we get those lump sum VRBO payments, we don't even know which properties those are attributed to. So while I had a license for our home for many years, there were years where we spent the entire summer here full-time, left the house empty because we were second homeowners, but I would get a call occasionally from Chuck saying, hey, you know, if you put your house in the rental system, I've got a family that wants to rent for the week of Christmas. I'm not going to be there for Christmas. We used to go to Pennsylvania. I'm like, hell yeah, $1,200, holiday time, I'm in. I got a business license. I rented my house for 1 week. So many of these people who come here to buy a 100-year-old plus home do so with the idea that they can defray and offset some of the cost to renovate that, make it livable, in some cases build it at square footage prices that are now like pushing up to $300, $400 a square foot. You need that in order to make this whole equation work. So I don't think, again, as I said 6 hours ago when I first spoke, that that these are companies gobbling up the real estate. It's people who want to be here, who have an end game in mind, find the rules, manage the problem. You know, one thing about parking I thought was an interesting thing I heard this week. We have 850, I was told by Elizabeth, inspections that I think we did last year for golf carts. Number could be wrong, but that's what was put in my head. I mean, I'm not pointing fingers necessarily, but we haven't made one golf cart parking spot or roped off grassy area for golf carts to alleviate parking issues in this town, which are essentially in every community that I've ever been to on vacation where there is a golf cart policy in place. I mean, you can pack a lot of golf carts into a very small footprint as opposed to having little four-seaters that are 8 feet long taking up a spot on Mason Avenue where there could be an SUV. So there's just so many things. I mean, that's one of a bajillion things that we could do, again, to manage the issue. But going back, it would be one thing if you could tell me, and this is something I've had said in every conversation, and I'll be quick, is that I've yet to hear anybody stand in front of me and say, Clayton, here's the problem. We have year over year 12% increase in vacation rentals. We have a flat or we have a decreasing number of full-time residents. That's a conversation starter.
But we need that data. Saying that there are 213 in the historic district is like me telling you what the market closed at today. That's an irrelevant number if you don't know what it closed at yesterday, last month, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years ago. You need to be able to evaluate the direction that we're headed in. And so much of what I'm hearing people describe, including my own mother, talking about where there were vacation rentals on her own street. The one across the street is not a vacation rental. They live in Charlottesville. They come in, they got a lot of kids, they bring friends, they're loud, they make noise. They're not vacation rental people. And I don't know what, if anything, we can do about people who own a second home at the beach. Nothing is the answer. So address the behaviors. You can have bad actors. When Sambo, our police chief, who still lives 3 doors down from me, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, his kids used to drag race their go-karts around the block at like 50 miles an hour. Almost killed my kid one night. No one yelled at Sambo about it. I mean, things happen. People do things. Ask Mr. Wilson. Dennis the Menace next door was not a good thing for him. Like, neighbors are neighbors. You got to find ways to limit behavior. Anyway, that's my lighthearted attempt at making people smile at midnight. So.
Sorry. Hang on. Just wanted to tag on to what Clayton said. It came up, the businesses had a little roundtable last week, and this may be a very popular opinion, so I hope I don't offend anybody, but the sense of community involves all of us. And the short-term rentals get a really bad rap, and we blame them for everything. There are just as many bad drivers, just as many full-time year-round residents who break the golf cart rules and, make illegal U-turns in the street. There are just as many who put their garbage cans in the middle of the road and block parking on Mondays and Tuesdays because they forgot to take their cans in. So the sense of community, it involves all of us every single day, and it's those behaviors. We talked about those behaviors of just being good citizens, and we have to, my opinion is the short-term rentals aren't the problem. They are here, we work together, we live together. I can't tell you how many people stayed at my inn in the past 14 years. I'm sure Tammy has the same situation. Cape Charles House and the Seagate had the same situation. How many of our guests became full-time residents after staying here, falling in love? How many of those, as a couple, came here and said, this is a great place for my family to stay? We sent them over to Kathy Weiner, and now they're short-term rentals every single summer. It's all part of the cycle, and I really believe the market will take care of itself. And this is, we cannot be blaming the short-term rentals for every single problem this town sees.
Hey, Clayton, on your question about the full-time, between the two censuses, it went up 20%.
Can't hear you. No, can't hear you at all.
The census, between the last two census, when they were counting the population throughout the country, it's gone up roughly 20% between the two, correct? That's what I've seen. Roughly in that area, full-time. They physically live there.
Many people have said this, but I want to say it again. We need data. We need hard data. We don't need my story. We don't need your story. We need to really delve into the data and then make decisions together. So the best way to do that is to get a consultant who does this sort of thing. And then we will work together to take care of whatever we think the problem is.
All good, all done? All right.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Now we have to go
Mr.
to-
Mayor?
yes.
As far as the letters that we normally read, we each got copies of easily 30 or more letters, and all council has gotten them, and I'd ask those letters be then sent through John to the subcommittee and forego reading and subjecting people to another 4 hours worth of
But
stuff.
they'll be put into the record.
Agree, yeah, so the procedure here for that is, the council's been, the clerk's done a great job of trying to get these to the council as she's been getting them so that they could have read them before tonight. There was probably a handful last minute that the council didn't get. So we will make sure the council gets every one of them for your review. We will put every one of them in the minutes, but if we don't need to read them all tonight.
But
So-
all I'm saying is the minutes is going to take some time to get out. The subcommittee is meeting in another 2 weeks or a week and a half.
A
We
week.
need those letters
Okay,
distributed.
I'll get those to the committee.
Thank you.
Are we all in agreement that the letters, we can forego the reading of the letters? All right. Yeah, we will.
Quite a
we will
few of the
pass on
letters were
those as
form
well.
letters that were distributed
We
and
would
just
already
filled in the
put those
blanks.
down. So do we need a motion, or can I just adjourn this?
Yeah, you still need a motion to adjourn.
All right, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Before,
Yes.
I'm sorry, before that, I just, I know a lot of people have left, but I want to thank everyone for coming out. I have to say, for me personally, I can't say I was really looking forward to tonight's meeting, but actually, I found it to be a very positive experience, very affirming of the reasons why I chose to live here. Made me feel really good about our community, and that regardless of people's position, the strong sense of community in this room. A lot of really good points made. I really liked what I heard about management, because honestly, I think if we look at things sort of through that framework, I really don't think the people in this room are that far apart. And I think there's a lot more common ground than we might realize right now. So thank you all for your participation, but also thank you for a really affirming experience. I'm feeling really good about living here at the moment. Thank you.
Anybody else?
No, there was one question. They wanted to, there was questions about if you're going to be running again for town council. I am. So.
You're the only one up for re-election, I believe, correct?
Yep. Well, you two are not running again.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that question.
I don't know what that has to do with anything.
I don't know either, but,
There was one of the letters had a
One
question.
of the comments asked that question, that's why he answered.
And yes, and it does affect my business indirectly, because I'm not for tourism. They sell to all the shops.
Yes.
So it don't affect it that much.
Would it be fair for John to tell everybody what's next steps, a calendar potentially?
I've scheduled committee meetings starting a week from now, and next Monday, we're going to meet, if we get it, we're going to meet again the week after that. But I'm going to need to circle back with all of you on, get a little more guidance on what the full process is going to look like going forward. So more to come on that. Without getting input from council, I don't want to say anything just yet.
Because that was the purpose of tonight.
Well, tonight was for you to get
us
get the input to think
get the
about,
big
and then I'm going to come back and ask you,
Right.
give me some guidance on process here, so.
I think that's
Well, as Andrew said, thank you all so much for coming out, and we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.